The Kinahan cartel, founded in Dublin in the late 1990s by Christy Kinahan, has become one of the world's most infamous criminal organizations. What started as a local street gang grew into a global crime syndicate, with assets estimated at €1 billion. Under Christie's leadership, the group expanded beyond Dublin, establishing connections across Europe. However, when his son Daniel took control, the cartel's activities took a darker turn. The organization became entangled in the Kinahan-Hutch feud, one of Ireland's bloodiest gang conflicts, resulting in 18 deaths and drawing unprecedented attention to the cartel. The violence was so extreme that Irish courts labeled the Kinahan group a murderous organization. In April 2022, the US Department of State offered substantial rewards for information to dismantle the cartel, elevating it from a national issue to an international priority. Despite increasing pressure from global law enforcement, the Kinahan cartel has shown resilience. They continue orchestrating multi-million euro drug shipments, adapting to challenges. While top members, including Daniel Kinahan, live luxuriously in Dubai, their Irish operations persist. For years, Ross Browning was thought to oversee the cartel's activities in Ireland as their main man in Dublin. However, recent developments indicate a significant power shift within the organization. A new figure has emerged to lead the cartel's Irish operations, marking a crucial moment in the group's history. This change in leadership comes as the cartel attempts to rebuild its presence in Ireland, despite sustained pressure from law enforcement since 2016. The organization's ability to adapt and the loyalty of its members have allowed it to maintain influence in the criminal underworld, even as authorities work to dismantle its operations both in Ireland and internationally. Liam Brannigan, a father of two from Bride Street in Dublin 8, is stepping into the role of the Kinahan cartel's new boss in Ireland. His rise reflects the complex nature of Dublin's criminal underworld. Even before the Kinahan-Hutch feud, Brannigan's neighborhood was known for criminal activity, with reports of about 200 known criminals living in the small area, spawning numerous crime families. The concentration of criminal elements in this area created a breeding ground for organized crime networks. Many of these families grew up near each other, fostering connections crucial for figures like Brannigan to rise in the criminal hierarchy. For instance, Fat Freddie Thompson's mother lived in Maryland, while the Howe and Brannigan families also called Dublin 8 home. Two key factors propelled individuals like Brannigan to prominence. First, the surge in cocaine use in Ireland created a huge demand for drugs, offering immense profit potential. Second, the expansion of their networks globally gave them access to drug importers, allowing them to become effective wholesalers for various gangs, particularly in West Dublin. Family ties also linked many of these criminals to influential figures in the broader underworld. One such connection was to Thomas "Bomber" Kavanagh, who became the Kinahan cartel's head of operations in the UK. These family and neighborhood connections created a tight-knit criminal network that proved challenging for law enforcement to penetrate. Brannigan's ascent to his new position within the Kinahan cartel demonstrates the enduring influence of these local connections and the adaptability of criminal organizations in the face of law enforcement efforts. Liam Brannigan's rise to prominence in the Kinahan cartel was complex. As a cousin of cartel figures Fat Freddie Thompson and Liam Byrne, he was already deeply embedded in Dublin's criminal world. His involvement in the long-running Crumlin-Drimnagh feud since 2001 further solidified his position. Unexpectedly, amidst gang warfare, Brannigan pursued higher education. He enrolled at UCD, completing a one-year access program and making progress in archaeology and history. This suggests a complexity to his character and perhaps a desire to escape crime. However, the underworld's pull proved too strong. Despite completing 2/3 of his studies, Brannigan abandoned academics to focus on his full-time position with the Kinahan cartel. This shift from aspiring student to one of the gang's main Dublin operatives marked a critical point in his criminal career. Brannigan's family history provides context to his involvement in organized crime. His father, John Barney Brannigan, was known to law enforcement, struggled with addiction, and served time for drug offenses. He died in prison while serving an 11-year sentence for a heroin distribution plot. This family connection to the drug trade was evident in Liam's early legal troubles. In 2008, guards found cocaine worth $700 in his South Inner City home. In a telling move, Brannigan tried to blame his drug-addicted father, who was willing to take responsibility. However, this ploy failed, and Brannigan received a suspended sentence for possession. Brannigan's journey from a crime-ridden background through attempted education to a high-ranking position in the Kinahan cartel illustrates the complex forces shaping Dublin's criminal landscape. Brannigan's involvement in the attempted murder of Gary Hanley in November 2017 marked a significant escalation in his criminal activities. Hanley, associated with the rival Hutch Group, was targeted by the Kinahan cartel as part of their ongoing feud. Brannigan was a key member of a 5-man Kinahan hit squad, orchestrating the attempt alongside his close associate Dean Howe. Despite the seriousness of their mission, the hit team displayed a surprising lack of professionalism. Over several months, they often slacked off, sleeping in and getting drunk instead of focusing on their task. This carelessness gave the Garda National Drugs and Organized Crime Bureau ample time to monitor their activities closely. Law enforcement's vigilance paid off when they intercepted the hit team just 500 yards from Hanley's home. Armed Garda officers stopped a Volkswagen Caddy containing Joseph Kelly and Luke Wilson, who had a loaded semi-automatic pistol, silencer, and ammunition. These had been collected from a cyclist at a Lidl car park in Glasnevin moments before. Brannigan was arrested near his home in Hanover Court. The investigation revealed he was the only squad member in direct contact with Kinahan leadership in Dubai, using an encrypted phone. This detail underscores Brannigan's elevated status within the cartel. The thoroughness of the Garda's surveillance operation became apparent during legal proceedings. Despite the cartel's meticulous planning, law enforcement built a compelling case against the hit team. The Special Criminal Court found Brannigan guilty of being central to the conspiracy to kill Hanley, sentencing him to 8 years in prison in 2020. Before his conviction for the Hanley murder plot, Liam Brannigan maintained a low profile despite being a top lieutenant in Daniel Kinahan's drug gang. His association with the cartel's leadership was evident in his attendance at Daniel's boxing events. This proximity, along with his skills and connections, positioned Brannigan as a rising star. Ireland's organized crime landscape has shifted due to pressure on the Kinahan cartel since 2016. A family gang has been identified as Ireland's primary drug suppliers, filling the void left by the Kinahan organization. However, the cartel aims to rebuild its presence. The release of members like Brannigan, who served their sentences without cooperating with authorities, has provided the cartel with loyal operatives. Brannigan's release in 2023 marked a turning point. With his acumen and network, Brannigan emerged as a candidate to assume a key role in the cartel's Irish operations, potentially leading efforts to regain influence. Intelligence suggests Liam Brannigan has become the Kinahan cartel's new leading figure in Ireland. This follows changes in the organization and Dublin's criminal landscape. Ross Browning, previously the cartel's main Dublin operative, has stepped back, likely due to increased scrutiny from the Criminal Assets Bureau. Brannigan's elevation was also facilitated by his cousin Liam Byrne's extradition to the UK on firearms charges. Byrne's arrest in Mallorca created a power vacuum that Brannigan is filling. In his new role, Brannigan leads the cartel's efforts to maintain and expand operations in Ireland. His knowledge of the local criminal scene and loyalty to the organization make him well suited to navigate the cartel's challenges in its home territory. Noel Duggan, also known by the moniker Kingsize, is a name that has become synonymous with organized crime in Ireland. His life, filled with high-stakes criminal enterprises, dangerous alliances, and a violent feud between two of Ireland's most notorious criminal families, is a tale of ambition, greed, and ultimately tragedy. Duggan's journey from a troubled youth in Dublin to one of Ireland's most feared and influential criminals is marked by his involvement in the cigarette smuggling trade, his connections with the Hutch crime family, and his tragic murder at the hands of the Kinahan cartel. His story remains one of intrigue and caution in the annals of Irish criminal history. Noel Duggan was born in the early 1970s in Dublin, Ireland, into a working-class family. While not much is known about his early years, Duggan's upbringing in the rough neighborhoods of Dublin likely played a key role in shaping his future. Growing up in an environment marked by social unrest, poverty, and violence, Duggan faced many challenges. Like many individuals raised in such conditions, he found himself drawn to a life of crime as a means of survival and, eventually, as a means of advancement. His early offenses were likely minor, such as burglaries and petty theft, but they set the foundation for the much darker path he would follow. Duggan's criminal activities were, in part, a product of the harsh Dublin streets and the rampant economic disparity. As he grew older, Duggan quickly realized that there were much larger opportunities for wealth and power in the world of organized crime. This realization would lead him into the dangerous world of smuggling and, later, to his affiliation with one of Ireland's most infamous criminal families. Duggan's early years seemed marked by struggles and adversities, but they were also foundational to his transformation into a prominent criminal figure. His connections to the underground world of Dublin's criminal scene would serve him well as he made his way up the ranks of the Irish underworld, gaining the trust and admiration of other key figures in the business. By the early 1990s, Noel Duggan's ambitions had grown, and so had the scope of his criminal activities. He became heavily involved in Ireland's cigarette smuggling trade, which at the time was a highly lucrative business. The practice involved importing large quantities of cigarettes into Ireland without paying the required taxes, resulting in a huge profit margin for those involved. It was an operation that required both smarts and discretion, and Duggan had both in abundance. His association with the smuggling trade allowed Duggan to amass significant wealth. However, unlike some of his counterparts who became embroiled in the physical labor of smuggling, Duggan was known for being a strategic figure in the operations, orchestrating the logistics behind the scenes. This allowed him to evade much of the risk involved, earning him a reputation as a shrewd and calculated criminal mastermind. Duggan's nickname, Kingsize, stemmed from his larger-than-life presence and his role in orchestrating one of Ireland's most prolific cigarette smuggling operations. His wealth grew rapidly as the cigarette smuggling trade flourished, and he soon became a key player within Ireland's organized crime scene. Duggan's success allowed him to build valuable relationships with other figures in the criminal underworld, most notably the Hutch crime family, a key player in Dublin's crime scene. However, despite his increasing wealth and power, Duggan managed to keep a relatively low profile. He was known to operate behind the scenes, often out of the public eye, while his criminal operations flourished. It was this ability to remain in the shadows while reaping the benefits of illicit trade that made Duggan an even more formidable figure in Ireland's criminal underworld. His growing wealth and influence made Duggan a valuable ally to those involved in organized crime, but it also made him an inevitable target for law enforcement. Despite facing several investigations into his activities, Duggan maintained a skillful ability to avoid arrest, remaining a free man despite his high-profile involvement in illicit operations. In the late 1990s and early 2000s, Ireland's criminal landscape was dominated by two major families, the Hutch family and the Kinahan family. The rivalry between these two groups escalated into a violent feud that would leave a trail of bloodshed and destruction throughout the country. Duggan, whose involvement in the world of organized crime had grown over the years, became closely associated with the Hutch family. He had built up significant ties within the Hutch organization, a relationship that would prove to be both lucrative and deadly. The feud between the Hutch and Kinahan families became one of the most violent and well-documented gang wars in Ireland's history. The conflict was driven by control over drug trafficking, smuggling routes, and territory. Duggan's involvement with the Hutch family meant that he was thrust into the heart of the conflict. His strategic mind and experience in organizing criminal operations made him an asset to the Hutch side, and he played a key role in their operations. However, his involvement in this feud would eventually lead to his tragic downfall. The intense feud between the Hutch and Kinahan families was not only a battle for dominance over criminal enterprises, but also a deeply personal rivalry. The Kinahans were determined to eliminate anyone standing in their way, and Duggan, with his key role in the Hutch family, became a prime target. Duggan's connections to the Hutch family made him an even more prominent figure in the conflict, and as tensions between the two factions escalated, the risk to his life grew greater. In 2016, the violence between the two families reached a peak. The Kinahan cartel, determined to eliminate their rivals, had no qualms about using extreme violence to gain the upper hand. Duggan, as a major player in the Hutch organization, became a prime target. His position within the Hutch group made him an enemy of the Kinahan cartel, and it was only a matter of time before the brutal nature of the feud would catch up to him. On the morning of March 23, 2016, Noel Duggan's life came to a violent and tragic end. Duggan was shot and killed outside his home in Ratawath, County Meath. The murder was a targeted assassination, and it was widely believed to have been orchestrated by the Kinahan cartel. His death marked a significant moment in the Hutch-Kinahan feud, and it sent a clear message to the Hutch family and their associates. The circumstances surrounding Duggan's murder were chilling. He was gunned down in broad daylight, outside his residence, an act that demonstrated the level of ruthlessness and brutality the Kinahan cartel was willing to employ in order to eliminate their enemies. Duggan's killing was described as a cowardly and callous act during his funeral, a reflection of the public's shock and disgust over the brutal nature of the crime. His death sent ripples through Ireland's criminal world, marking a major turning point in the ongoing conflict between the two families. Duggan's death was not just a loss for the Hutch family, but also a grim reminder of the violence and bloodshed that defined the criminal landscape in Ireland during that time. His death was a tragic culmination of a life spent in the pursuit of power, wealth, and control in a world built on crime and brutality. Despite Duggan's death, the ongoing feud between the Hutch and Kinahan families continued, fueled by anger, retaliation, and a desire for control. Duggan's murder did little to quell the violence, and his passing was but one chapter in a bloody saga that would stretch on for years. Following Duggan's murder, the violence between the Hutch and Kinahan families continued unabated. The killing of Duggan served as a catalyst for further retaliation and conflict between the two groups, with both sides continuing to target each other's members and associates. The feud between the families remained one of the most high-profile and dangerous criminal conflicts in Ireland, with several other individuals being killed in the following months and years. Duggan's death also brought attention to the wider issues of organized crime in Ireland, particularly the role of criminal families in smuggling, drug trafficking, and other illegal enterprises. Law enforcement agencies in Ireland continued to investigate the Kinahan cartel and the Hutch family, making arrests and attempting to dismantle their operations. However, the entrenched power of these criminal organizations proved difficult to challenge, and the violence associated with the feud persisted for years. Despite multiple law enforcement efforts to curtail the influence of the criminal families, Duggan's death demonstrated the deep roots these families had in the criminal world, making it difficult to disrupt their operations. Marking the end of Noel Duggan's life was the violent and untimely manner in which it occurred. Duggan's criminal legacy, particularly his role in the cigarette smuggling trade and his central position within the Hutch crime family, left an indelible mark on Ireland's criminal landscape. The aftermath of his murder served as a stark reminder of the deadly consequences of a life spent in organized crime. Duggan's story is one of ambition, ruthlessness, and tragedy. His rise from a petty criminal to one of Ireland's most influential and feared criminals was marked by his ability to avoid detection while making vast amounts of money. But his ties to the Hutch crime family, his role in the violent feud, and the ruthless Kinahan cartel ultimately sealed his fate. Duggan's life is a cautionary tale about the dangers of the criminal world and the price that many criminals pay when they become too entrenched in a life of violence. His legacy is also a stark reflection of the cycles of violence and bloodshed that have long plagued Ireland's criminal landscape. Duggan's name continues to echo as a symbol of both the opportunities and dangers that come with organized crime. On a seemingly ordinary May morning in 2016, at the early hour of 7 a.m., Mary MacDonald's life was about to be irrevocably altered. Living in the Avondale House flats in Dublin, she had grown accustomed to the quiet hum of mornings in the complex. The soft morning air was usually filled with peace as the world around her slowly came to life. But on that fateful morning, a sharp, urgent knock at her door shattered the tranquility. Before Mary could even react, the door was thrown open, and two men stormed into her apartment, their guns drawn. The men were unmoved by Mary's frantic protests as they took control of her flat. They quickly positioned themselves at the windows, eyes fixed on another apartment. What Mary didn't know at that moment was that they were closely monitoring one of her neighbors, tracking his every move. As soon as the man left his flat, the two men sprang into action. Rushing down the stairwell of the building, they were nearly on top of the unsuspecting neighbor as he strolled toward his car in the complex's car park. The man seemed oblivious to the danger behind him. He casually removed his jacket and placed it inside his vehicle, unaware of the two shadows closing in. Just as he was about to take a seat behind the wheel, one of the attackers fired. 4 deafening shots rang out, slicing through the early morning stillness. The victim staggered from the gunfire, with 2 shots hitting him in the neck, one in the lower back, and the final shot in his chest. Blood pooled around him as he crumpled to the ground. Meanwhile, the second gunman attempted to fire, but his weapon jammed. Frustration and panic set in as he struggled with the gun, unable to complete the task. The job was, for all intents and purposes, done. The 2 assailants fled, leaving the lifeless body of the victim behind. Their escape, however, was not without complications. They hurriedly jumped into a waiting black BMW, only to find the vehicle refused to start. Scrambling in a panic, they abandoned the BMW and sprinted to a nearby Skoda Octavia. This time, the engine roared to life, and they quickly sped off, disappearing into the distance. When authorities arrived at the scene, the BMW provided chilling clues. Inside, officers found a jerry can of petrol, likely intended to destroy evidence, along with 2 changes of clothes. It was clear that this murder had been meticulously planned, with every detail carefully considered. Just days before his execution, the victim, 35-year-old Gareth Hutch, had been informed by the Irish police of a threat to his life. What many didn't know at the time was that Gareth was no ordinary man. He was the nephew of Jerry the Monk Hutch, one of Ireland's most infamous criminal figures, and this murder was just one piece of a much larger and deadlier puzzle. The killing was part of an ongoing and vicious feud between 2 rival criminal families, the Hutch family and the Kinahan cartel. This feud had already seen several bloodshed-filled chapters, including the infamous Regency Hotel shooting 3 months earlier. That attack, which took the life of David Byrne, a key figure within the Kinahan cartel, had sent shockwaves through Dublin, and it ignited a full-fledged war between the 2 factions. Gareth's murder marked the 8th death in this brutal conflict, a testament to the scale of the violence that was consuming the city. Before his death, Gareth had confided in a local councillor about his growing fear of being murdered. He was particularly afraid of being killed in front of his young son. At the time, Gareth had been desperately searching for a safer apartment to move to, one that would shield him from the escalating threats. However, time was running out. The The tension in the Avondale house flats was palpable the day before Gareth's murder. Mary MacDonald, whose apartment would soon become an unwitting vantage point for the killers, witnessed a heated confrontation in the complex's car park. Jonathon Keogh, a well-known gunman she had known for years, squared off with Gareth Hutch. The words exchanged were chilling, and Mary would never forget them. Jonathon warned Gareth that if anything happened to his sister Regina or his family, he would personally come after Gareth. That night, Jonathon Keogh came to Mary's apartment with an offer. He wanted to use her flat for a few hours in exchange for €5,000. Mary, feeling uneasy, declined the offer. But Regina, Jonathon's sister, was persistent, insisting that Mary comply. Their refusal to accept Mary's refusal left her feeling cornered and trapped in a situation she couldn't escape. Later that evening, around 10:45 p.m., Jonathon Keogh and another man followed Mary into her apartment. Once inside, the two men drew handguns from their trousers and began to meticulously wipe them down with wet wipes. The sanitized weapons were placed in a bag, and the men departed without further incident. Disturbed by what had just happened, Mary called Regina to express her concerns, stating she didn't want any part in their dangerous plans. Regina dismissed her fears, and minutes later, she arrived at Mary's apartment, leaving behind rubber gloves on the kitchen counter, an ominous gesture that underscored their control over the situation. The next morning, as the sun barely peeked over the horizon, Jonathon Keogh and his accomplice forced their way into Mary's apartment again. This time, they were lying in wait for Gareth to emerge. As he stepped outside, the men rushed into action, confronting him in the parking lot before executing him cold-bloodedly. Less than 12 hours after the murder, a chilling CCTV video began circulating on social media. The footage captured the brutal execution of Gareth Hutch, showing two gunmen stealthily approaching Gareth as he tried to enter his car. Their intentions were unmistakably lethal, and the shots rang out, bringing a tragic and swift end to the life of the Hutch family member. The botched escape attempt of the killers soon became their undoing. After abandoning the black BMW, the men fled in a Skoda, but they left behind a trail of evidence that investigators would later use to identify them. A thorough investigation led to the identification of the primary shooter, 33-year-old Jonathon Keogh, a man already notorious within the criminal world. Jonathon Keogh's criminal history was long and troubling. His reputation for violence and lawlessness had cemented his place as a significant figure within Dublin's underworld. His run-ins with the law began when he was arrested for manufacturing pipe bombs for the Irish National Liberation Army. In the raid, authorities seized steel pipes, batteries, alarm clocks, and other components meant to create bombs of maximum lethality. Keogh's motivations for making the bombs were not ideological. Rather, they were part of a money-making racket targeting drug dealers through kidnapping, extortion, and intimidation. After serving an 8-year prison sentence, Keogh returned to his life of crime, now with even more ambition. He entrenched himself deeper into organized crime, forming alliances with other mobsters from Limerick and Eastern Europe. Keogh's violent path would eventually lead him to become a key player within the Kinahan cartel's hit squad, targeting the Hutch family as part of their deadly feud. Keogh's criminal endeavors escalated when he became involved in the Kinahan cartel's war against the Hutch family. After the Regency Hotel shooting in 2016, which had claimed the life of David Byrne, Keogh and his accomplices were tasked with assassinating members of the Hutch family. Jonathon Keogh's close connection with notorious gangland figures, including Thomas McConnell, Gerard Mackin, and others, solidified his role in this violent network. In 2016, Spanish authorities revealed that Keogh was on the Kinahan payroll, orchestrating operations aimed at eliminating Hutch family members. His role in the cartel's hit squad was pivotal. and he had a hand in many of the brutal executions that occurred during this violent feud. Keogh, along with Eamon Cumberton, was responsible for a series of meticulously planned murders that would leave the Hutch family reeling. However, the law would eventually catch up to Keogh. In the aftermath of Gareth Hutch's murder, Keogh fled Ireland, seeking refuge first in Scotland, then in London. His attempt to vanish from the public eye was short-lived, as detectives eventually tracked him to Essex, England, where he had applied for a new passport. Keogh was arrested by the UK's National Crime Agency and extradited back to Ireland. There, he stood trial for the murder of Gareth Hutch, alongside his sister Regina Keogh and accomplice Thomas Fox. All three were found guilty and sentenced to life imprisonment in December 2024. The trial revealed the depth of the conspiracy and the chillingly calculated planning that had gone into the murder. The court's findings were damning. Jonathon Keogh, the ringleader, had been involved in almost every aspect of the planning and execution of the murder. His sister Regina had played a key role by securing the use of Mary MacDonald's flat as a vantage point, while Thomas Fox had served as the getaway driver. Since his incarceration, Keogh's behavior has remained volatile. Known for his violent outbursts, he has been a constant source of trouble in prison. He has threatened prison staff, engaged in altercations with other inmates, and been transferred multiple times due to his disruptive behavior. In 2018, after a violent incident in Mountjoy Prison, Keogh was transferred to another facility. Keogh's reign of terror within Ireland's criminal world continued to spiral out of control, but even in the face of justice, he remains defiant. He has repeatedly expressed regret over involving his siblings in the Kinahan-Hutch feud, but his violent history suggests that redemption is unlikely. On a busy Saturday afternoon in September 2014, the normally tranquil atmosphere of Harmon's Irish Bar, located in the upscale resort of Alvia near Marbella, was shattered. The sun-drenched terrace was packed with holidaymakers and locals alike, enjoying the warm Mediterranean weather. But in a matter of seconds, all of that would change. Chaos erupted in a scene that would forever be remembered in Spain's criminal history. Two gunmen stormed the bar, methodically targeting one individual in particular. The man, Gerard Hatchet Kavanagh, a 44-year-old Irish boxer turned drug dealer, was seated at a corner table, wearing casual green swim shorts and chatting with a woman, blissfully unaware of the brutal fate awaiting him. Without warning, the gunman opened fire. 3 shots struck his arm, followed by another 3 into his back. As Kavanagh desperately attempted to retreat into the safety of the bar, he collapsed at the doorway, helpless. The assassins then executed him with 2 final shots to the head. One stray bullet even pierced a nearby parked car. Witnesses later described the assailants as eerily calm, operating with the precision and skill of seasoned professionals, almost like ninjas. One of them was cloaked entirely in black, moving swiftly and deliberately. After the execution, the pair fled the scene in a BMW, which was found burnt out a few kilometers away, just down the road near a supermarket, a trail of destruction and death left in their wake. The man gunned down in broad daylight, as it turned out, was none other than Gerard Hatchet Kavanagh. Once a promising boxer, Kavanagh had fallen from grace, his life spiraling into the dangerous world of organized crime. Born and raised in Ireland, Kavanagh had once been a contender in the Irish boxing scene, but the allure of wealth and power led him down a darker path. He moved to Spain nearly a decade before his death, where he quickly embedded himself in the murky world of drug dealing. His ties to the infamous Kinahan cartel, one of Europe's most ruthless criminal organizations, were well known. This connection would ultimately seal his fate. Kavanagh's fall from the ring to the criminal underworld was swift. No longer a fighter in the traditional sense, he became a key enforcer for the Kinahan cartel. His role was clear: collecting debts, dealing with rivals, and ensuring that the cartel's business ran smoothly across Europe. Kavanagh was not just another low-level thug. He had earned his place at the table in the violent world of drug trafficking, money laundering, and organized crime. Kavanagh's association with the Kinahan cartel was no accident. The Kinahan family, originally from Ireland, had become one of the most powerful crime syndicates in Europe. Operating out of Dublin, they controlled vast networks of drug trafficking, money laundering, and arms dealing. Their reach extended into Spain, the UK, and beyond, as they capitalized on the booming drug market. Gerard Kavanagh, with his violent reputation and connections in Spain, was a perfect ally for the Kinahans. He was part of a well-oiled machine that moved illegal substances across borders, evading law enforcement at every turn. In fact, Kavanagh had been dispatched to Dublin just months before his execution to collect a massive drug debt, €1 million, on behalf of the cartel. The debt was owed by a group of low-level dealers who had failed to deliver. When Kavanagh didn't return with the money, the Kinahan cartel wasted no time in sending a message. Failure had consequences. Kavanagh had failed them, and the price for that failure would be death. He became a target within his own organization. Kavanagh's violent end would not be the last tragedy to strike his family. Just 2 years later, his son, Jamie Kavanagh, narrowly escaped death in an attack that would become infamous across Ireland and the UK. Jamie, a promising boxer in his own right, was attending a fight at the Regency Hotel in Dublin. What was meant to be a celebratory evening for Irish boxing quickly descended into chaos when gunmen stormed the venue, opening fire indiscriminately. Amidst the gunfire, gangster David Byrne was killed. Jamie Kavanagh, though shaken, survived the attack, but it served as a stark reminder of the deep entanglement of his family in organized crime. In the aftermath, the world began to piece together the connections between the Kavanagh family, the Kinahan cartel, and the ongoing gangland violence in Ireland. The Regency Hotel shooting, which became a symbol of the escalating feud between the Kinahan cartel and rival gangs, was seen as a warning shot. No one was safe, not even the family members of prominent criminals. Gerard Kavanagh wasn't the only one involved in this international web of crime. His cousin, James Mulvey, was equally entrenched in the world of drugs and money laundering. Mulvey, originally from the UK, was known for his charm, his intellect, and his ability to run a smooth operation. While Kavanagh was the enforcer, Mulvey was the strategist, the mastermind behind much of their criminal empire. Together, they built a network that spanned the globe, with drug shipments moving from South America to Europe and money flowing into secretive offshore accounts. Mulvey's rise to prominence within the criminal world began in the early 2000s. He was known for his sharp business acumen, which he used to establish smuggling routes and laundering operations. He even started running drugs through France, where his operations began to draw the attention of law enforcement. But it was in 2008, when French police intercepted a large drug shipment involving both Mulvey and Kavanagh, that their operation began to unravel. Despite the setback, Mulvey continued to expand his empire, operating from luxury hotels and exclusive locations across Europe. The duo was responsible for shipping massive quantities of cocaine and cannabis across borders, using sophisticated methods to evade detection. Mulvey's network was vast, and his ability to move drugs without attracting attention made him one of the most dangerous figures in the international drug trade. While Kavanagh and Mulvey operated in the shadows, their wealth and lifestyle reflected their success. Mulvey, in particular, was known for his extravagant taste. He lived in a villa in Spain worth €1.5 million, complete with an indoor pool, cinema, and multiple luxury cars. His connections extended to the highest echelons of European society, with Mulvey frequently seen at exclusive events, rubbing shoulders with the rich and powerful. But beneath the surface of this lavish lifestyle lay a network of crime, deception, and danger. Mulvey was not only involved in drug smuggling, but also in money laundering. He used legitimate businesses, such as nightclubs in Birmingham, to funnel illicit profits. His wealth, however, was built on the blood of countless victims. The cocaine shipments, the money that flowed through banks, and the violence that accompanied it all were the true cost of his empire. As Mulvey's empire expanded, so too did the attention of law enforcement. In 2013, the National Crime Agency began a covert investigation into his activities. They traced millions of euros being funneled through offshore accounts in places like the Isle of Man and Monaco. Meanwhile, French, Spanish, and Belgian authorities were working together, pooling their resources to track Mulvey's movements across Europe. The investigation uncovered a complex network of smuggling operations. Drugs were hidden inside industrial machinery, shipped across borders in containers marked as legitimate goods. But the authorities were closing in. Belgian warehouse workers tipped off the police about suspicious activity, and suddenly, Mulvey's carefully constructed empire was at risk of being exposed. With each passing day, the noose tightened. Mulvey's downfall came in 2017. When he was arrested in a dramatic raid by Lithuanian special forces. He had been on the run for years, constantly shifting locations, but his arrest marked the beginning of the end for the Kinahan cartel's European operations. The NCA and other European agencies had pieced together the full extent of Mulvey's empire, uncovering millions of euros in illegal transactions. Mulvey's capture was the culmination of years of undercover work and international cooperation. It sent a shockwave through the world of organized crime, signaling that even the most powerful criminals could be brought down. The Kinahan cartel, once the undisputed kingpins of European drug trafficking, found themselves under intense scrutiny, with many of their key operatives either arrested or in hiding. In 2018, after a lengthy trial, Mulvey was sentenced to 32 years in prison for his role in orchestrating the import of drugs worth over 80 million euros into the UK. But while Mulvey's capture was a significant victory for law enforcement, it didn't signal the end of the Kinahan cartel. The organization continued to operate, but their grip on Europe had weakened. Mulvey's arrest marked the beginning of a crackdown on the cartel's operations. Despite the sentence, Mulvey's legacy looms large. His influence on the global drug trade, his connections to the Kinahan cartel, and the vast network of criminals he left behind continue to echo through the world of organized crime. And while law enforcement continues to close in, the story of Gerard Kavanagh and James Mulvey is a reminder of the dangerous and volatile world of international drug trafficking. The brutal execution of Gerard Kavanagh, the rise and fall of James Mulvey, and the unraveling of the Kinahan cartel represent just one chapter in the ongoing battle between law enforcement and organized crime. James Byrne, a notorious figure in the Dublin criminal underworld, has passed away at the age of 77. Known by the nickname Jaws, James died in Tala Hospital on a Saturday evening after a prolonged battle with illness. His death marks the end of a chapter for a family steeped in gangland activity and violence, particularly linked to the infamous Kinahan cartel. Byrne was not only a notorious criminal in his own right, but also the father of David Byrne, who was brutally murdered in the Regency Hotel attack in 2016, and Liam Byrne, who is facing charges for organized crime-linked offences in the UK. As the father figure to some of the most notorious criminals in recent Irish history, his death has caused a stir in both the criminal and law enforcement communities. The death of James Byrne comes at a difficult time for the Byrne family. Just a few weeks earlier, another family member, his nephew Liam Rowe, also passed away after battling cancer. Rowe was another known associate of the Kinahan cartel, further emphasizing the family's deep-rooted ties to the criminal underworld. At the time of James's death, a close relative was also arrested for public order offences and detained at Sundrive Garda Station in Dublin, signalling the ongoing troubles facing this notorious family. James Byrne's death is more than just the end of a long life. It symbolizes the end of an era of a criminal who was intimately involved in one of Ireland's most vicious gangland feuds. Byrne was linked to the infamous Hutch-Kinahan feud, a violent gang war that has resulted in numerous deaths over the years. His son David Byrne's death in the Regency Hotel shooting marked a significant escalation in this feud. Sources suggest that after his son's murder, James Byrne became deeply involved in planning retaliatory attacks against the Hutch family, including a botched attempt to kill John Hutch, the brother of Jerry the Monk Hutch, in September 2016. The attack, carried out by hitman Michael Carroll, failed, but it demonstrated Byrne's thirst for vengeance and his significant role in orchestrating violence from behind the scenes. Despite his age and failing health, James Byrne remained actively involved in the feud against the Hutch family. One source stated, he was desperate for revenge over the killing of his son and wanted the Kinahan cartel to kill as many Hutches as they could. His associates, including Liam Brannigan, met with Michael Carroll after the failed attempt on John Hutch's life, a meeting that showcased Byrne's influential role in this ongoing violent conflict. James Byrne, known as Jaws due to his aggressive demeanor, was no stranger to crime. His criminal career spanned decades, marked by various illegal activities, including armed robbery, fraud, and counterfeiting. In his younger days, Byrne was closely associated with notorious figures like Martin, the General Cahill, another violent criminal who dominated Dublin's underworld for years. Byrne specialized in stolen checks, forged documents, and fraudulent activities, which made him a target for law enforcement agencies like the Criminal Assets Bureau. Throughout his life, Byrne faced multiple legal battles. In 2002, he agreed to repay €43,000 in unemployment assistance he was not entitled to, and in 2004, he settled a cab tax assessment for over €378,000 by paying €208,000. The cab had seized cash and assets from his home multiple times, including a €35,000 Rolex watch that Byrne claimed was a gift, though he never disclosed the giver. Despite his numerous legal troubles, Byrne managed to evade lengthy prison sentences, showcasing his cunning and resilience in navigating the criminal justice system. The Byrne family, especially in Dublin's Crumlin area, became synonymous with organized crime. The neighborhood itself was a stronghold for the Byrne organized crime group, acting as a hub for their illicit operations. James Byrne's son, Liam Byrne, lived just across the street from his parents, and his home was one of several properties seized by CAB in their ongoing efforts to disrupt the Kinahan cartel's operations. David Byrne, another son, lived nearby until his murder in 2016. The Byrne family's close proximity to one another in Crumlin exemplifies the tight-knit yet dangerous nature of their operations, with each member playing a role in sustaining their criminal enterprise. Byrne's wife, Sadie Byrne, also played a role in the family's activities. Though not directly involved in crime, the High Court found in 2018 that she, along with James and other relatives, had access to proceeds from criminal activities carried out by the Byrne organized crime group. Despite their legal troubles and constant surveillance by law enforcement, the Byrne family maintained their presence in the criminal world, highlighting the deep entanglement of their personal and criminal lives. David Byrne's death at the Regency Hotel in 2016 was a turning point in the Hutch-Kinahan feud. The attack, carried out by members of the Hutch gang disguised as armed police, made international headlines for its brazen nature. This single event sparked a violent and bloody retaliation from the Kinahan cartel, with James Byrne being a key figure pushing for revenge. The gang war that followed resulted in numerous murders and attacks on both sides, creating a climate of fear and tension in Dublin and beyond. Every year, James and his wife Sadie would leave floral tributes at the North Dublin hotel where their son was murdered, a grim reminder of the violence that had claimed their son's life. However, Byrne's involvement went beyond mere grief. It transformed into a driving force for more violence. Investigators believe that Byrne, fueled by the loss of his son, helped identify targets for the Kinahan cartel and pushed for continued aggression against the Hutch family. James Byrne was not only deeply involved in the Hutch-Kinahan feud, but also maintained strong ties with the Kinahan cartel, led by Christy Kinahan and later by his son Daniel Kinahan. Byrne's own sons, Liam and David, were considered senior figures within the cartel, operating as major drug traffickers and organized crime figures in Dublin. Liam Byrne, currently detained in London's high-security Belmarsh prison, faces multiple charges, including conspiracy to possess firearms and perverting the course of justice. In addition to Liam Byrne, other close associates of James, such as Thomas Bomber Kavanagh, face similar charges, underlining the family's ongoing struggles with law enforcement. These trials are expected to be lengthy and complex, potentially lasting up to 8 weeks, and revealing more details about the extent of the Byrne family's criminal empire and their connection to the wider Kinahan cartel operations. In the months leading up to his death, James Byrne's health had deteriorated significantly. In recent years, he had kept a lower profile, no longer appearing publicly at gangland funerals or other criminal gatherings. His absence was noted at the funeral of his nephew Liam Rowe, who died after his own battle with illness. Despite his failing health, Byrne's influence in the criminal world remained significant, with law enforcement continuing to monitor his activities and those of his associates closely. Byrne's death was announced with a death notice that painted a picture of a man surrounded by family and loved ones at the time of his passing. His wife Sadie, still reeling from the loss of both her son and nephew, is said to be devastated by his death. She plans to visit her son Liam in prison before his trial in the UK, highlighting the ongoing struggles the Byrne family faces in navigating both their personal and criminal lives. James Byrne's death closes a significant chapter in Dublin's gangland history, but his legacy lives on through his surviving family members and their continued involvement in crime. As a patriarch of a criminal family that played a central role in one of Ireland's most violent gang feuds, Byrne's influence and actions will be remembered for years to come. The Byrne family, with its ties to the Kinahan cartel, remains under scrutiny by both Irish and international law enforcement agencies. The violence and bloodshed associated with their name continue to cast a shadow over Dublin's streets. The question now is what the future holds for the Byrne family without its patriarch. With Liam Byrne facing serious charges in the UK and the remaining family members still under intense surveillance, the once powerful family may be on the brink of losing its stronghold in the criminal underworld. However, as history has shown, the cycle of crime and violence is difficult to break, and the legacy of James "Jaws" Byrne may continue to influence the streets of Dublin for years to come. The death of James Byrne, a veteran of Dublin's underworld, marks the end of an era. Known for his connections to the Kinahan cartel and his deep-seated vendetta against the Hutch family, Byrne's life was defined by violence, crime, and loss. His passing may bring some closure to a dark chapter in Ireland's gangland history, but the impact of his actions and the ongoing feud he helped fuel will likely continue to echo throughout the streets of Dublin. As the Byrne family prepares for life without their patriarch, the question remains: will this be an opportunity for the family to step away from a life of crime? Or will they continue to follow in the violent footsteps of their patriarch? Law enforcement agencies remain vigilant, knowing that the death of one gangland figure often leads to a power vacuum that others are eager to fill. The story of the Byrne family is far from over, and their criminal legacy will continue to shape the landscape of Dublin's underworld for the foreseeable future. In the early hours of a frigid January morning in 2019, Graham Whelan, an infamous figure in Ireland's criminal underworld, was rudely awakened from his slumber in a lavish penthouse suite at Dublin's Intercontinental Hotel. Whelan, known by his street moniker, the Wig, had been indulging in a luxurious 3-night stay, shelling out over €2,100 for the privilege of occupying room 342, complete with its own outdoor living space. Unbeknownst to Whelan, his opulent respite was about to come to an abrupt end. Law enforcement officers burst into his suite, catching him off guard amidst a collection of illegal substances, cocaine and cannabis, along with some high-value items. A €28,000 Audemars Piguet Royal Oak timepiece and €1,275 in cash. When confronted by the authorities, Whelan's response was as brazen as it was crude. He quipped that the money had been retrieved from an intimate bodily location, colloquially referred to as his Swiss roll, and told the officers they were welcome to keep it. In a display of bravado, he went on to proclaim his dangerous criminal status, even pointing out one of the officers present, claiming, "Ask that fella there, he locked me up," a clear reference to a previous encounter with law enforcement. Whelan's notoriety in Ireland's criminal landscape stretches back many years. He's long been associated with the Byrne organised crime syndicate and is considered a high-ranking member of the infamous Kinahan cartel. His close ties to other notorious figures such as Thomas Bomber Kavanagh, Fat Freddie Thompson, and the late David Byrne have cemented his position as a major player in Ireland's underworld. Despite his criminal past, Whelan now asserts that he's turned over a new leaf, adding an intriguing twist to his story. He seems to be in a relationship with the sister of renowned MMA fighter, Conor McGregor. Originating from Clonard Road in Crumlin, Whelan earned his peculiar nickname, the Wig, due to a distinctive haircut he sported in his teenage years. For over 2 decades, he's been a central figure in organised crime. However, recent years have brought significant personal tragedies. In 2020, Whelan's wife passed away, leaving him to care for their 4 young children. The following year, he suffered another blow when his close associate and fellow Kinahan cartel member, Philip Griffiths, took his own life. Whelan's criminal career began in earnest back in March 2000. At the tender age of 17, he was caught up in a major drug bust at a Dublin hotel. Law enforcement uncovered a substantial drug operation, seizing €1.6 million worth of ecstasy and cocaine. Whelan, along with Griffiths and another young man named Declan Gavin, were arrested in the midst of processing the drugs. During his arrest, the young Whelan displayed a cocky attitude, boasting to the guards that he could easily handle a decade-long prison sentence. In the aftermath of the bust, only Gavin was released without charges, sparking suspicions within their criminal circle about his loyalty and potential cooperation with authorities. This incident marked the beginning of the infamous Crumlin-Drimnagh feud, which split the gang into 2 rival factions, one led by Fat Freddie Thompson and the other by Brian Rattigan. Tragically, Gavin, who was closely associated with Thompson, was fatally stabbed just days before his trial related to the hotel bust was set to begin. Despite their youth, both Griffiths and Whelan received substantial prison sentences. Whelan, who remained loyal to Thompson's faction, was handed a 6-year term. Upon their release in the mid-2000s, both men continued their involvement in organised crime. Whelan fostered close relationships with David Byrne and Freddie Thompson, who had by then become major figures in Ireland's criminal landscape. In 2007, Whelan and Byrne found themselves in police custody in connection with the 2006 murder of hitman Gary Bryan, a killing linked to the ongoing feud. Bryan had been involved in the shooting of Paul Warren in 2004, which was attributed to the Rattigan faction. In retaliation, Bryan was gunned down by Thompson's group. Whelan had been observed driving past the house of Bryan's mother-in-law shortly before the shooting occurred. Bryan had intended to leave the area, but was fatally shot before he could make his escape. Investigators uncovered a connection between a mobile phone registered to a relative of Byrne and Whelan, showing frequent communication between the two on the day of Bryan's murder. While in custody, Byrne attempted to pass newspapers to Whelan through the guards. Upon inspection, authorities discovered a note from Byrne warning, "Loose lips sink ships." Despite their arrest, both men were eventually released without charges. Byrne would later meet a violent end during the notorious Regency Hotel attack in 2016. As the years passed, Whelan continued to climb the ranks of the criminal underworld. He played a significant role in managing the cartel's drug distribution network in South Dublin and collaborated with criminal groups across Ireland, including gangs in Limerick. His rising prominence made him a target for law enforcement under anti-gang legislation, introduced over a decade ago. Authorities compiled a comprehensive file on Whelan, intending to present it to the Director of Public Prosecutions in hopes of bringing charges against him under the new legislation. This action was prompted by the arrest of one of Whelan's associates, who was caught carrying cash in 2009. A subsequent raid uncovered a list detailing names and amounts paid, with numerous references to Whelan's alias, the Whig. However, the DPP ultimately decided not to press charges. Feeling the heat from law enforcement, Whelan relocated to the UK in 2011. There, he aligned himself with Thomas Bomber Kavanagh, a senior figure in the Kinahan cartel and brother-in-law to David and Liam Byrne. Kavanagh had left Ireland years earlier and had risen to become the head of the Kinahan cartel's UK operations. Following his move to the UK, Whelan took charge of significant drug operations spanning Europe, Ireland, and Britain. He frequently travelled to Spain and the Netherlands during this period. In 2016, Whelan was involved in a violent altercation in Spain, resulting in a conviction for grievous bodily harm. He received a 2-year suspended sentence for this offence. Despite his relocation, Whelan made regular trips back to Ireland in the years leading up to his most recent incarceration. He was suspected of overseeing the cartel's drug operations in the country during these visits. In November 2021, Whelan was sentenced to prison for the Intercontinental Hotel room incident. He received a 3-year sentence, with the final 18 months suspended for money laundering offences, including possession of the €28,000 watch. In the wake of Whelan's 2019 hotel arrest, law enforcement agencies conducted a major operation targeting nearly 20 homes and businesses linked to him. During these searches, documents were discovered suggesting Whelan owned property in the UK, with records indicating ongoing mortgage payments being transferred to a vulture fund. This investigation resulted in the state seizing €75,000 from Whelan, which was deemed to be proceeds of criminal activities. It was later revealed that at the time of his arrest, Whelan had been in possession of a drug-related debt list and an EncroChat phone. This discovery occurred 18 months before Dutch and French authorities successfully hacked the EncroChat network, leading to widespread arrests across Europe. In July 2021, Whelan entered a guilty plea to charges of participating in the operations of an organized crime gang through money laundering activities. He also admitted to possessing over €1,200 in cash and the Audemars Piguet watch, both of which were obtained through criminal means. Furthermore, Whelan confessed to spending €2,140 on the luxurious 3-night hotel stay, knowing or believing that the funds used were proceeds of criminal activities. During his time behind bars, Whelan received several visits from Aoife McGregor, sister of the famous MMA fighter Conor McGregor. The two had developed a close friendship following the breakdown of F's marriage. Whelan was released from Mountjoy Prison in December 2022, and the pair continued to see each other after his release. Whelan's connection to the McGregor family extends beyond his relationship with Aoife McGregor. He had previously been photographed with Conor McGregor on multiple occasions and was even seen playing for McGregor's football team, the Black Forge, in October 2021. As Whelan now faces an uncertain future, questions arise about whether he will make good on his claims of reformation or if he will revert to his criminal past. His story serves as a stark reminder of the complex and often violent world of organized crime in Ireland and the far-reaching consequences it has on individuals, families, and society at large. Whelan's journey from a teenage drug dealer to a high-ranking member of one of Ireland's most notorious criminal organizations illustrates the insidious nature of organized crime. It shows how early involvement in criminal activities can lead to a lifetime entrenched in the underworld, with severe personal and societal costs. The repeated interventions by law enforcement, while sometimes successful in securing convictions, seem to have had limited impact on Whelan's overall trajectory within the criminal world. This raises questions about the effectiveness of current strategies in combating organized crime, and the challenges faced by authorities in dismantling these powerful criminal networks. Whelan's story also highlights the personal toll of a life in crime. The loss of his wife and the suicide of his close associate Griffiths underscore the human cost of involvement in criminal activities. These personal tragedies, coupled with his responsibilities as a single father to 4 young children, may have contributed to his claimed desire for change. The intersection of Whelan's criminal world with the celebrity sphere, as evidenced by his connection to the McGregor family, adds another layer of complexity to his story. It demonstrates how the boundaries between the underworld and mainstream society can sometimes blur, creating unexpected and potentially problematic associations. As Whelan navigates his post-prison life, his story serves as a cautionary tale about the long-term consequences of criminal involvement and the challenges of breaking free from a deeply entrenched criminal lifestyle. Whether he will successfully reform himself or be drawn back into his old ways remains to be seen, but his story continues to captivate public interest and shine a light on the ongoing issues of organized crime in Ireland. In the shadowy realm of Ireland's criminal landscape, few names evoke as much fear and fascination as James "Nellie" Walsh. Currently, Walsh finds himself in an unprecedented and perilous situation, not running from the long arm of the law, but from the very criminal fraternity he once called his own. With a staggering $200,000 bounty on his head, Walsh has become the most hunted figure in Ireland's underworld, a testament to the volatile and treacherous nature of organized crime in the country. Walsh's journey into the heart of Ireland's criminal world began in the gritty streets of Dublin's Ronanstown area. From his teenage years, Walsh showed a propensity for lawlessness, quickly ascending the ranks of local gangs. By the early 2010s, he had established himself as a force to be reckoned with in West Dublin's criminal scene. What set Walsh apart from his peers was not just his ruthlessness, but his brazen desire for notoriety. In an era where most criminals seek to operate in the shadows, Walsh reveled in the limelight. He frequently took to social media, posting images of himself brandishing weapons, wearing balaclavas, and issuing threats to rivals. This unusual behavior not only elevated his profile within criminal circles, but also made him a subject of intense interest for law enforcement and the public alike. At the heart of Walsh's notoriety lies the so-called Clondalkin Feud, a protracted and bloody conflict that has claimed multiple lives and left a trail of destruction across Dublin and beyond. The feud, primarily between Walsh's faction and a gang affiliated with the notorious Kinahan cartel, has its roots in a complex web of personal vendettas, territorial disputes, and the cutthroat economics of the drug trade. The spark that ignited this powder keg can be traced back to a series of events in the early 2010s. In 2011, Walsh's associates were suspected of involvement in the killing of a man named Dean Johnson. This incident, while tragic, might have remained just another statistic in Dublin's gang violence. However, it set in motion a chain of events that would escalate the conflict to unprecedented levels. 2 years later, in 2013, another Dean Johnson, unrelated to the first, became an innocent victim of this brewing war. In a twist of fate that seems almost too cruel to be true, this Johnson had the misfortune of swapping jackets with Walsh in a pub one fateful night. As he left the establishment, he was mistaken for Walsh by rival gangsters and gunned down in cold blood. This case of mistaken identity not only claimed an innocent life, but also served to intensify the hatred between the warring factions. The violence reached new heights with the chilling murder of Gerard Eglinton in September 2012. Eglinton, a criminal with links to another notorious figure, Brian Rattigan, was shot dead in front of his stepdaughter and 3-year-old son in Portarlington, County Laois. The brutality of this killing, carried out with complete disregard for the presence of children, shocked even the hardened members of Ireland's criminal underworld. Once again, Walsh's associates were suspected of involvement, further cementing their reputation as ruthless guns for hire. The involvement of the Kinahan cartel in this feud added a new dimension to the conflict. The Kinahan organization, known for its international reach and sophisticated operations, brought significant resources and manpower to bear against Walsh and his allies. This escalation turned what might have remained a localized dispute into a conflict with national implications. One of the key figures in this Kinahan-affiliated opposition was Padraig Keating, a high-ranking member of the Clondalkin gang. Keating's involvement in the feud became personal following the murder of his brother-in-law, Jason J. Carroll, in 2013. Carroll's killing was believed to be in retaliation for the mistaken identity shooting of Dean Johnson, which Walsh's faction blamed on Carroll. The involvement of such high-profile criminals as Keating and the broader Kinahan organization elevated the stakes of the conflict. It was no longer just about local rivalries. It had become a war for supremacy in Ireland's criminal hierarchy. While much of Walsh's criminal career has been marked by his ability to evade justice, he hasn't been entirely untouchable. His most serious conviction came in 2014, resulting in a 10-year sentence for a failed assassination attempt on Michael Fraser, a car dealer with alleged ties to the criminal underworld. The incident that led to this conviction was as brutal as it was bizarre. Walsh, hired as a hitman, ambushed Fraser in a church car park in Clondalkin. He shot Fraser multiple times, causing severe injuries. However, in a turn of events that seems almost comical in its ineptitude, Walsh accidentally shot himself in the leg during the attack. This self-inflicted injury not only allowed Fraser to escape with his life, but also provided crucial evidence that led to Walsh's conviction. The fact that Walsh had been part of Fraser's own circle of associates before turning on him highlights the fluid and treacherous nature of allegiances in the criminal world. It's a stark reminder that in this world, there are no permanent friends, only permanent interests. Walsh's time in prison did little to diminish his influence or his propensity for violence. While incarcerated, he was reportedly assaulted multiple times by individuals connected to his many enemies, a testament to the long reach of criminal vendettas. Despite these challenges, Walsh managed to maintain his network and influence, a feat that speaks to his cunning and the loyalty he commanded from his associates. His release in July 2022 marked a new chapter in the ongoing saga. Far from lying low or attempting to distance himself from his criminal past, Walsh seemed to embrace his notoriety with renewed vigor. Since his release, Walsh has found himself at the center of increasingly violent attempts on his life. In October 2022, he narrowly escaped a machine gun attack in Tala, where he was lured under the pretense of a drug deal. The audacity of this attack, using such a high-powered weapon in a residential area, underscores the disregard for public safety that characterizes these gang conflicts. Following this incident, Walsh fled Dublin for County Wexford, seeking refuge from his pursuers. However, even in this new location, danger followed him. During a trip to Carlow to purchase a car, he was ambushed by armed individuals. Miraculously, Walsh escaped unscathed, though the attack posed a significant risk to innocent bystanders, with stray bullets even piercing a nearby house. These close calls, rather than sobering Walsh, seem to have emboldened him. Reports suggest that while hiding out in Wexford, he brazenly visited pubs wearing a bulletproof vest, boasting about his ability to survive assassination attempts. This behavior left law enforcement officials baffled and concerned about the potential for further violence. In a modern twist to this age-old conflict, Walsh has taken to social media platforms like TikTok to taunt his enemies. In recent videos, he openly named rivals, including Padraig Keating, branding them as rats. This digital provocation represents a new frontier in gangland feuds, where conflicts that once played out solely on the streets now find expression in the virtual world. The consequences of these online taunts have been all too real. Shortly after Walsh's TikTok posts, an arson attack occurred on a house in Clondalkin. Authorities suspect this was a retaliatory act orchestrated by associates of Keating. Tragically, the home belonged to an innocent family with no direct involvement in the feud, highlighting the indiscriminate nature of the violence and its impact on the wider community. As of the latest reports, Walsh remains in hiding, constantly moving between locations to evade his pursuers. Recent intelligence suggests he may have taken refuge in a town in County Kildare, associating with local criminals. This has led to a surge in armed police patrols in the area, as authorities attempt to prevent further violence and potentially apprehend Walsh. The $200,000 bounty on Walsh's head remains active, a sum that ensures he will continue to be hunted by opportunistic criminals and vengeful enemies alike. This ongoing threat has turned Walsh into a paradoxical figure, a man who simultaneously seeks the limelight through his social media antics while needing to remain hidden to stay alive. The saga of James Nellie Walsh is more than just a tale of one man's criminal career. It serves as a microcosm of the larger issues plaguing Ireland's fight against organized crime. The longevity and intensity of the Clondalkin feud highlight the entrenched nature of these criminal networks and the challenges faced by law enforcement in dismantling them. The feud has exposed the interconnectedness of various criminal groups across Ireland, from local gangs to international cartels like the Kinahan organization. It has also shown how personal vendettas can escalate into full-scale wars that engulf entire communities. Moreover, the Walsh saga underscores the evolving nature of organized crime in the digital age. The use of social media to issue threats and taunt rivals adds a new dimension to these conflicts, potentially inciting violence with the click of a button. The impact on local communities cannot be overstated. Innocent bystanders have been killed, homes have been destroyed, and entire neighborhoods live under the shadow of potential violence. The psychological toll on residents in areas affected by these feuds is immense, creating a climate of fear and mistrust. For Irish law enforcement, the Walsh case presents a complex set of challenges. On one hand, there's the immediate need to protect Walsh from his would-be assassins, despite his criminal history. The issuance of a Garda information message, formed to Walsh, warning him of threats to his life, illustrates the strange position police find themselves in, having to protect a known criminal from other criminals. On the other hand, there's the ongoing effort to bring Walsh and his associates to justice for their numerous crimes. This dual mandate of protection and prosecution creates a delicate balancing act for the guards. The case also highlights the need for more sophisticated approaches to combating organized crime. Traditional methods of policing may not be sufficient to deal with criminals who are media savvy, technologically adept, and have international connections. As the hunt for James Nellie Walsh continues, questions abound about the future of organized crime in Ireland. Will this feud eventually burn itself out, or will it continue to claim lives and disrupt communities? Can law enforcement develop new strategies to effectively combat these entrenched criminal networks? The Walsh saga also raises broader societal questions. What factors drive young people into these criminal organizations? How can communities resist the allure of gang life and the quick money it promises? Are there policy changes or social interventions that could help break the cycle of violence? As Ireland grapples with these issues, the story of James Nellie Walsh stands as a stark reminder of the human cost of organized crime. It's a tale of violence, betrayal, and the corrupting influence of power and money. But it's also a story that holds up a mirror to society, challenging us to confront the conditions that allow such criminal empires to flourish. In the end, the James Nellie Walsh saga is more than just a true crime narrative. It's a complex tapestry of social, economic, and cultural factors that have shaped modern Ireland. As the country continues to evolve and face new challenges, the lessons learned from this ongoing conflict will undoubtedly play a role in shaping its approach to crime, justice, and community safety for years to come. In the heart of Dublin's south inner city, Crumlin and Drimnagh were more than just neighborhoods. They were the epicenter of a criminal underworld that shaped the destinies of many. This world, steeped in violence and power struggles, was where Liam Rowe, known as Bop, made his mark. Born into a world where survival meant navigating the treacherous waters of crime, Rowe's early life was a stark contrast to the more glamorous aspects of his later years. Crumlin, with its tightly knit community, was a place where every street corner and alley held memories of struggles, conflicts, and alliances. Rowe's upbringing in this environment exposed him to the harsh realities of street life. The area's grim reality was painted vividly by the constant presence of gangs and the ongoing feud that defined the local criminal landscape. Rowe's early forays into street trading and petty crime were a precursor to his deeper involvement in the criminal world, laying the groundwork for his future as a significant figure in Dublin's underworld. The Crumlin-Drimnagh feud, a notorious conflict that began in the late 1990s, was more than just a local dispute. It was a clash that resonated throughout Dublin's criminal circles. The feud was characterized by a series of bloody confrontations, each more violent than the last, and left a trail of devastation in its wake. For Rowe, aligned with the Crumlin faction under Fat Freddie Thompson, the feud was both a battleground and a stage for his rise within the criminal hierarchy. One of the most significant events in this feud was the 2002 attempt on the life of Brian Rattigan, a prominent leader of the rival Drimnagh gang. Rowe's involvement in this attack was a testament to the violence that defined the feud. The assassination attempt, meticulously planned and executed, was a bold move by the Crumlin faction. However, despite the precision of the attack, Rattigan survived, highlighting the unpredictable nature of gang violence and the constant danger that lurked around every corner. The attack on Rattigan was just one chapter in a series of violent incidents that marked the feud. The murder of Darren Kearns and David Douglas, two individuals wrongly believed to be involved in the attack on Liam Rowe at the Red Cow, underscored the ruthless nature of the conflicts Liam Rowe was involved in. Their deaths, driven by mistaken identity and suspicion, were a grim reminder of the high human cost of gang warfare. As the 2000s progressed, Rowe's role within the Kinahan cartel evolved. From a street-level enforcer, he rose to become a key figure in the cartel's operations. This transformation marked a significant shift in Rowe's responsibilities, moving him from direct involvement in violent acts to a more strategic role in managing the cartel's operations. His ascent was a reflection of his skills and his ability to navigate the complex dynamics of the criminal world. Rowe's new role involved overseeing logistics, managing drug trafficking routes, and securing properties for the cartel. This shift from foot soldier to a high-ranking operative was accompanied by a change in Rowe's lifestyle. His rise in the cartel was marked by luxury and excess, a stark contrast to his earlier, more modest existence. Rowe's new wealth allowed him to indulge in a lifestyle that included designer clothing, luxury cars, and extravagant vacations. This transformation was a testament to the power and influence he wielded within the cartel. Despite his elevated status, Rowe remained a target for law enforcement. His high-profile lifestyle and connections to the Kinahan cartel made him a prime subject for investigations by the Criminal Assets Bureau. Rowe's attempts to maintain a low profile were often undermined by his visible wealth and the frequent scrutiny from the authorities. His high-stakes lifestyle, coupled with ongoing legal threats, created a precarious balance that defined his later years. The Crumlin-Drimnagh feud left a lasting impact on Dublin's criminal landscape, shaping the lives of those involved and perpetuating cycles of violence. Rowe's involvement in the feud was a key factor in his rise within the Kinahan cartel, but it also left him with a legacy of violence and suspicion. His suspected involvement in high-profile criminal activities, including the murder of Brian Rattigan's brother Joey and an attempted murder in the Coombe district, highlighted the ongoing repercussions of the feud. The violence associated with the feud was not limited to direct confrontations. The suspicion and paranoia that fueled the conflict led to tragic and often unjust consequences. The deaths of Darren Kearns and David Douglas, driven by mistaken identity, were a reflection of the broader impact of the feud on innocent lives. Their murders, along with the failed attack on Rattigan, underscored the indiscriminate nature of gang violence and the high cost of living in a world defined by conflict. Rowe's role as a trusted lieutenant of Liam Byrne, a key figure in the Kinahan cartel, was a testament to his influence and status within the criminal world. His responsibilities included managing various aspects of the cartel's operations, from drug trafficking to money laundering. This elevated role brought with it significant risks, including constant scrutiny from law enforcement and the ever-present threat of violence from rival factions. By the late 2010s, Rowe's life had become a complex interplay of luxury and danger. His high-profile lifestyle, characterized by luxury cars, designer clothes, and extravagant vacations, was a stark contrast to the ongoing threats and scrutiny he faced. The Criminal Assets Bureau's investigation into Rowe's finances and lifestyle highlighted the contradictions in his life. Despite his claimed unemployment, Rowe's substantial wealth and lavish lifestyle were a source of ongoing concern for the authorities. Rowe's involvement in high-profile criminal activities, including the murder of Joey Rattigan and the attempted murder in the Coombe district, continued to haunt him. These activities, along with his high-profile lifestyle, made him a target for both law enforcement and rival gangs. The relentless pursuit by the Criminal Assets Bureau and the constant threat of violence underscored the precarious nature of Rowe's position within the Kinahan cartel. The Regency Hotel attack in February 2016, which resulted in the murder of David Byrne, Rowe's cousin and a fellow Kinahan affiliate, was a significant event in the ongoing feud. The attack, carried out by the rival Hutch gang, highlighted the escalating violence and the personal cost of the conflict. Rowe's response to the attack, including his actions during the Regency Hotel incident and the subsequent legal battles, was a testament to the high-stakes nature of his life within the cartel. Liam Rowe's life came to a tragic end in August 2024, following a battle with aggressive cancer. His diagnosis, made only a few months prior, marked a dramatic turn in his life. The disease, compounded by the stress and danger of his criminal lifestyle, led to his death at St. James's Hospital in Dublin. His passing was a significant event in the ongoing saga of Dublin's criminal underworld. The funeral service held for Rowe at Our Lady of Good Counsel Church in Drimnagh was a somber affair, reflecting the dramatic changes in the gang's fortunes. The contrast between Rowe's funeral and the opulent displays associated with other gang-related funerals was stark. The absence of high-profile gang members and the lack of extravagant displays of power highlighted the shifting dynamics within the criminal world. Rowe's funeral was attended by a mix of family, friends, and criminal associates. Among the mourners was Sadie Byrne, the mother of Liam and David, Lee Gibson, a Drimnagh resident and known associate of Liam Byrne. The presence of these individuals underscored the complex web of relationships and alliances that defined Rowe's life and career. As Rowe was laid to rest at Byrne Brina Cemetery, reflections on his life were mixed. His journey from a streetwise youth to a key figure in the Kinahan cartel was marked by both achievements and tragic failures. The story of Liam Rowe serves as a poignant reminder of the high cost of life in the world of organized crime. His rise and fall are emblematic of the broader dynamics of Dublin's criminal underworld, where every triumph is overshadowed by the ever-present shadow of danger. The legacy of Liam Rowe is a reflection of the broader patterns of organized crime in Dublin. His life, marked by ambition, violence, and eventual decline, is a testament to the high price of living a life on the edge. The narrative of Roe's life is a complex tapestry, woven with the threads of power, conflict, and personal downfall. Roe's story is not just one of individual ambition and failure, but also a reflection of the broader dynamics of organized crime. His rise within the Kinahan cartel, his involvement in the Crumlin-Drimna feud, and his eventual decline are indicative of the cyclical nature of violence and power in the criminal world. The story of Liam Roe, like so many figures in organized crime, is a reminder of the high cost of a life lived in the shadows. As Dublin continues to grapple with the legacy of its criminal underworld, the story of Liam Roe serves as a cautionary tale. His life and death are emblematic of the broader struggles faced by those who navigate the dangerous and often deadly world of organized crime. The legacy of Liam Roe is a reflection of the complexities and contradictions that define the world of criminality, where every triumph is tempered by the ever-present threat of danger and retribution. Brad Dempsey was born in the early 1990s in Dublin, Ireland, into a world of crime, violence, and intrigue. His father, Fat Freddie Thompson, was one of the most infamous and feared figures in the Irish underworld, a criminal mastermind with a reputation that stretched across Dublin and beyond. As a son of such a notorious figure, Brad was exposed to the world of organized crime from a very young age, whether he was aware of it or not. His mother, Vicky Dempsey, would later testify that she feared for her son's future, knowing that his upbringing would be shaped by the dangerous world around him. Dublin itself during the 1990s was rife with gang violence and drug dealing, and many children in the city were influenced by the chaos around them. For Brad, the line between right and wrong was often blurred, and his early years would soon see him pulled into a world of crime that would define his life. As a child, Brad's life wasn't like that of most kids. He was thrust into the world of criminality due to his father's lifestyle. While most children were playing games and attending school, Brad's formative years were spent in the shadows of his father's violent empire. His father, Freddie Thompson, was a leader in Dublin's criminal underworld, heavily involved in drug trafficking, extortion, and a series of violent murders. As Brad grew older, he witnessed his father's influence in Dublin and understood that this life, however dangerous, was one that his family was entrenched in. At the age of just 9 years old, Brad's criminal exposure took a shocking turn. He was reportedly used by the notorious Kinahan cartel, a gang linked to his father's operation, to smuggle a significant sum of money. According to reports, he was used as a drug cash mule to carry €5,000 through Mullingar Airport in Spain. It's unclear how much Brad understood of the situation, but his involvement marked a disturbing initiation into the criminal world at a very young age. His early exposure to illegal activities would prove to have a lasting impact on Brad, shaping the trajectory of his life. His mother, while acknowledging that Brad was influenced by his father's actions, expressed her deep guilt and sorrow for the choices that led her son down this dangerous path. As Brad entered his teenage years, the influence of his father and the criminal lifestyle became more apparent. Freddie Thompson, known for his ruthlessness and dominance in the Irish underworld, continued to be a figure of power, and Brad couldn't escape his father's legacy. The young Dempsey had been exposed to criminal activities at a young age, and his proximity to such violence and criminality would come to shape his worldview. While Brad was still in his early teens, his father's criminal activities were getting more complicated and violent. Thompson's criminal empire had expanded beyond just drug trafficking into extortion, money laundering, and eventually, involvement in organized crime syndicates across Europe. Freddie's ties to violent gangs and his role as a key figure in the Dublin criminal scene made him a target for law enforcement, but also a respected and feared figure within the criminal community. At the age of 17, Brad was seen at several criminal events, further cementing his involvement in his father's criminal network. While it's unclear whether Brad was directly involved in any illegal activities at this point, it was apparent that he was moving in the same circles as his father. His actions and associations began to signal that he was being groomed to take on a larger role in the family business. As the years passed, the grip of law enforcement on Freddie Thompson's criminal empire grew tighter. In 2005, Thompson was arrested for the murder of David Douglas, a prominent figure in the criminal world, leading to a lengthy trial. Freddie Thompson was later sentenced to life imprisonment for his involvement in the murder. While his father was behind bars, Brad's life continued to unfold in the shadow of his father's arrest. His criminal activities, however, were just beginning to take shape. The void left by his father's incarceration saw Brad become more involved in the Dublin criminal scene. It's not clear whether he was fully in charge of the operations during this period or merely a figurehead in the background, but his name began circulating more frequently in association with his father's former associates. As Brad Dempsey grew older, his name became synonymous with violence and criminality. By the time he was in his early 20s, he had gained a reputation as a dangerous and unpredictable figure. While his father had been a criminal mastermind who used his intellect and strategic mind, Brad was more volatile and willing to engage in violent confrontations. His reputation as a ruthless enforcer started to spread, especially in the context of gang rivalries that were increasingly erupting in Dublin. In 2017, Brad Dempsey was arrested for his involvement in a violent shooting incident. It was just one of several acts of aggression that Brad was accused of carrying out, and it served to further solidify his role in his father's criminal activities. In a shocking turn of events, it was reported that Brad had taken part in a series of shootouts and confrontations between rival factions in the Dublin criminal world. It was clear that he was not only continuing his father's legacy, but also establishing his own reputation as a ruthless figure in the city. By 2022, Brad Dempsey had reached a critical point in his criminal career. In January of that year, he was arrested in connection with a shooting incident that occurred on Margaret Kennedy Road in Dublin 8. During the shooting, Brad fired 5 shots into a car occupied by 4 individuals. The shooting was part of a larger escalation in the gangland violence that had taken hold of Dublin, and it was seen as another violent act in a long line of similar crimes committed by members of the criminal underworld. Brad Dempsey was later convicted of possession of a firearm and other related charges, and in 2023 he was sentenced to 8 years in prison. His sentence, while significant, did little to reduce his prominence in the criminal world. During his time in Mountjoy Prison, Dempsey was known for causing problems with other inmates, and he was kept in isolation for his own safety due to the nature of his criminal background. During his time in prison, the possibility of a reunion between Brad Dempsey and his father, Freddie Thompson, was discussed. However, prison staff expressed significant concerns about the risks of such a meeting. Given the high-profile nature of both individuals and the violent reputations they held, any attempt for a father-son reunion would have posed serious security risks. Both Freddie and Brad were seen as high-value targets within the prison system, and staff were highly cautious about any interaction between them. Despite their shared history and criminal ties, the likelihood of a reunion between father and son remained slim, with both individuals seemingly operating in separate spheres of the criminal world. Freddie Thompson, serving a life sentence for the murder of David Douglas, continued to serve time in Portlaoise prison. Meanwhile, Brad Dempsey's life in Mountjoy Prison remained clouded by further violent outbursts and clashes with other inmates. Brad Dempsey's life, much like his father's, has been defined by crime and violence. Growing up in a household where criminality was the norm, Brad's exposure to the underworld was inevitable. From a young age, he was thrust into a dangerous world, and his actions as an adult mirrored the path his father had carved before him. However, it's clear that Brad has his own violent streak, and that he is willing to use force to protect his interests. As a young man, Brad had the world at his feet, but his potential was overshadowed by the criminal influences that surrounded him. The tragic story of Brad Dempsey is one of opportunity lost and a life wasted on violence and criminality. As of now, Brad Dempsey remains incarcerated in Mountjoy Prison, Dublin, serving his sentence for the 2022 shooting incident. The future for Brad remains uncertain. His violent tendencies, coupled with his criminal family ties, make his rehabilitation unlikely. However, his life behind bars is not entirely devoid of drama, as his time in prison has been marked by numerous altercations with fellow inmates. The likelihood of his continued involvement in the criminal world remains high once he eventually serves his sentence, and whether he will ever be able to break free from his father's legacy is a question that remains unanswered. The story of Brad Dempsey serves as a stark reminder of how a criminal legacy can shape the lives of those born into it. From a young boy involved in illegal activities to a violent enforcer in Dublin's criminal world, Brad has walked the same path as his father. Whether he will be able to escape this path and forge a new future remains to be seen. But for now, he remains another product of Ireland's deeply entrenched criminal culture. In July 2008, a shocking incident unfolded in Dublin's Kilmore neighbourhood, marking a tumultuous period in the city's criminal underworld. Anthony Foster, with a history of cannabis offences, left Cromcastle Court to meet his partner and collect their children from daycare. Unaware of the danger, Foster was ambushed by a concealed assailant as he descended the stairs. The attacker fired a lethal shot at Foster's face, killing him instantly. This act of violence at 1:45 in the afternoon turned a routine family errand into a horrific crime scene. The brazen daylight attack in a residential area shocked the community and escalated Dublin's gangland conflicts. Investigators soon focused on David "Babyface" Lindsay, a major figure in the city's drug trade since the 1990s. His involvement in Foster's murder marked a critical misstep, triggering events that would reshape Dublin's organised crime landscape. Authorities revealed that Lindsay meticulously planned Foster's attack, enlisting D. Griffins, known for armed robbery, who received substantial compensation for securing a motorcycle as the escape vehicle. This planning underscored Lindsay's serious intent and resources. Law enforcement swiftly apprehended D. Griffins for Foster's death, but an unexpected twist embarrassed the police. D. Griffin escaped custody by exploiting a defect in his cell's lock, leaving authorities in disbelief and under public scrutiny. This incident highlighted organised crime's reach and law enforcement vulnerabilities. Anthony Foster's calculated murder stemmed from a bitter conflict between David Lindsay and former ally Michael the Panda Kelly in North Dublin. By 2008, Lindsay and Kelly's relationship had soured over a substantial drug-related debt, with Kelly reportedly owing Lindsay millions. Once trusted, Kelly had become a rival, prompting Lindsay to target Foster, who had close ties to Kelly. Lindsay intended Foster's murder as a stark warning to Kelly, aiming to reassert his dominance in the criminal hierarchy. Let's delve into it. Lindsay's calculated move proved to be a critical misstep, as Foster's murder incited a furious response from Kelly. Dublin's criminal landscape was soon engulfed in a storm of vengeance and brutality with unforeseen consequences. Michael Kelly, residing on Swan's Nest Road in Kilbarrack, had a lengthy criminal record, including 15 convictions and a notable 1998 ecstasy possession case with a suspended sentence. Over time, Kelly's influence grew, making him a dominant force in North Dublin's drug trade, especially in the Coolock area. Kelly reportedly accumulated millions of euros from his extensive illegal activities. His rise was bolstered by a connection to major drug supplier Christy Kinahan, which expanded his operations and profits, placing Kelly at the center of an international drug trafficking network. Kelly's criminal activities extended beyond drug trafficking. He gained a fearsome reputation linked to multiple homicides, with reports suggesting involvement in at least 6 murder cases. His wealth, territorial control, and alleged extreme violence made him one of the most feared figures in Ireland's criminal landscape. In response to Foster's murder, Kelly recruited Eric "Lucky" Wilson to eliminate Lindsay and his associate, Alan Napper. Wilson, with a history of violent crime, had previously been contracted by Lindsay to kill Kelly over a drug debt, demanding a kilogram of cocaine as payment. Known as Ireland's most prolific contract killer, Wilson took on the task of revenge. Less than a week after Foster's murder, Kelly orchestrated a complex deception leading to the swift and violent deaths of Lindsay and Napper. This act of vengeance sent ripples of fear through Dublin's criminal networks, marking a particularly dark period in the city's underworld history. Lindsay and Napper were last seen in County Kildare, intending to travel to Northern Ireland. Unaware, they walked into a trap set by Kelly, who had lured them with the promise of settling their financial dispute. Instead of resolving matters, Kelly directed them to a rural property in County Down, where Wilson awaited. Investigations revealed that Lindsay and Napper suffered severe physical abuse before their deaths. The PSNI found traces of Lindsay's blood at the scene, offering a glimpse into their final moments, but their remains were never found. Investigators and criminal circles believe the 2 men were killed and dismembered to facilitate disposal, with their remains likely discarded in the Irish Sea. This method of erasing all physical evidence became associated with Eric Wilson's modus operandi, adding to his fearsome reputation. Kelly's brutal retaliation sent a wave of fear through Dublin's criminal circles, solidifying his ruthless reputation. This was further cemented by his alleged connection to another high-profile killing in April 2008, where Anthony Russell, a man with an extensive criminal history, was fatally shot while socializing at the Ardley Inn. Known for drug distribution and armed robbery, Anthony Russell was part of Christy Griffin's criminal organization based in Sheriff Street, Dublin's north inner city. The gang engaged in drug trafficking, armed robberies, and truck hijackings, often targeting Dublin port. Their reported association with the Dublin-based Provisional IRA added to their notoriety. Russell's murder, following closely after Lindsay and Napper's disappearance, heightened tension and violence in Dublin's underworld. These events underscored the intricate criminal alliances, rivalries, and brutal methods used to assert dominance within these networks. Kelly's alleged involvement in these high-profile murders solidified his reputation as a formidable figure in Ireland's criminal world, striking fear among both rivals and associates. In September 2010, another violent incident linked to Kelly's organization occurred when Sean Winters, a local drug dealer, was fatally shot in Portmarnock. Winters, previously associated with Lindsay and Napper, had reportedly become a concern due to his increasingly erratic criminal behavior. Authorities gathered intelligence suggesting Kelly's gang outsourced Winters' murder to a local group affiliated with the real IRA. This collaboration highlighted the intricate and interconnected nature of criminal factions operating in and around Dublin at that time. During this turbulent time, Michael Kelly faced constant threats to his life, prompting him to adopt a nomadic lifestyle. He moved between coastal regions in Spain and urban centers in the Netherlands, amid reports of a contract on his life. Law enforcement warnings pushed Kelly to seek safety in continental Europe. Despite being a father of 3, Kelly chose to stay away from Ireland for his safety. Abroad, he reportedly formed new alliances with international drug trafficking groups, gaining a reputation in local criminal circles as a key facilitator. Rumors swirled about his role in coordinating large-scale drug shipments linked to Christy Kinahan's extensive supplier network. In the summer of 2011, Kelly returned to Ireland for the birth of his child, a rare visit that would prove fateful. On a September afternoon around 1 p.m., Kelly left his girlfriend's apartment on Marsfield Avenue in Clongriffin, a northern Dublin suburb. As he walked towards a friend's parked car, a silver Saab suddenly pulled out from nearby. Sensing danger, Kelly tried to escape, but was unable to evade the assailants. They opened fire from the Saab, using what appeared to be an AK-47 style rifle. The gunfire shattered the quiet afternoon, hitting Kelly with 14 bullets. After the initial shots, 2 attackers got out of the vehicle, approached Kelly, and fired several more rounds at close range, showing no mercy in the brutal assault. The assailants returned to their vehicle and callously drove over Kelly's bullet-riddled body before fleeing. Despite his severe injuries, Kelly managed to briefly call out his girlfriend's name. When law enforcement arrived, Kelly was found face down among scattered banknotes, having succumbed to his wounds, a grim scene marking the violent end of one of Ireland's most infamous criminals. The getaway vehicle, undamaged, was located a short distance from the scene, approximately a 10-minute drive away. Inside its trunk, investigators discovered the discarded weapons used in the attack, crucial evidence for the case. Michael Kelly's violent death signaled the conclusion of his notorious career in Dublin's underworld, shocking the city and prompting concerns about potential repercussions. Kelly's assassination was deemed the most significant in Ireland's gangland history since Eamon the Don Dunn's killing the previous year. The attendance of several prominent underworld figures at Kelly's funeral, including Fat Freddie Thompson, underscored his high standing in the criminal hierarchy. Before his death, Kelly faced mounting pressure from law enforcement. The Criminal Assets Bureau took action, obtaining permission to sell 2 vehicles and a property linked to his illicit activities. Following Kelly's violent end, his personal life remained newsworthy. His widow, Kawimi Robinson, later married Daniel Kinahan, another influential figure in organized crime. Their lavish wedding in Dubai in summer 2017 highlighted the interconnectedness of these criminal networks. The investigation into Kelly's murder pointed towards Alan Ryan, a senior member of the real IRA in Dublin, as the likely mastermind. Reports suggested that Kelly had refused financial demands from Ryan and his associates, potentially leading to the fatal confrontation. Ryan's rapid rise within the real IRA was notable, but his own story ended tragically when he became a victim of a similar style of attack in 2012, highlighting the cyclical nature of gang conflicts. Nathan Kinsella's story begins in the tumultuous landscape of Dublin during the early 2000s. Born into a society grappling with economic hardship and social unrest, Kinsella's early years were marked by the complexities of urban life in Ireland. His entry into the world of crime came through his association with the real IRA, a splinter group that rejected the peace process and sought to continue the armed struggle against British rule. The real IRA was known for its radical ideology and violent tactics, setting itself apart from other paramilitary groups by focusing on attacks against both the British state and those they deemed as collaborators. Kinsella, driven by a combination of ideological fervor and personal ambition, quickly aligned himself with this faction. His rise through the ranks was not without challenges. He had to navigate the dangerous world of paramilitary politics, often marked by internal rivalries and violent power struggles. Kinsella's early involvement was characterized by his role in orchestrating violent acts, extorting businesses, and managing arms trafficking operations. His activities were not just a means of earning money, but were intertwined with a broader strategy to establish and maintain power within the organization. This period of his life laid the foundation for his later criminal enterprises and shaped his reputation as a ruthless and efficient operative. By the mid-2000s, Nathan Kinsella's growing influence caught the attention of Jimmy Mansfield Jr., a wealthy and influential figure in Dublin's criminal underworld. Mansfield Jr. and his family had established a significant empire, and their business interests spanned various sectors, including real estate and construction. However, their empire was increasingly entangled with criminal activities, and they needed strong connections to maintain and expand their operations. Kinsella's entry into Mansfield Jr.'s sphere marked a significant turning point. Mansfield Jr. sought Kinsella's expertise to manage and protect his business interests amidst growing threats and competition. This partnership was forged out of necessity, with Kinsella providing the muscle and connections needed to safeguard Mansfield's assets and enforce his will. Their collaboration involved a range of illicit activities, including money laundering, extortion, and violent enforcement actions. Kinsella's role was crucial in managing these operations, utilizing his network within the real IRA to provide the necessary support and intimidation required. The partnership was mutually beneficial. Mansfield Jr. gained protection and expanded his influence, while Kinsella leveraged Mansfield's resources to further his own criminal enterprises. The death of Alan Ryan in 2012 was a watershed moment for Nathan Kinsella. Ryan, a prominent leader within the real IRA, was killed in a violent confrontation, leading to a significant power vacuum within the organization. Ryan's death triggered a period of intense internal conflict, as various factions within the real IRA vied for control and influence. Kinsella, having been closely associated with Ryan, found himself at the center of this turmoil. His position became increasingly precarious, as rival factions challenged his authority and sought to undermine his influence. During this period, Kinsella was involved in several violent confrontations, including an attempted assassination that left him wounded. Despite these setbacks, Kinsella managed to navigate the chaotic environment and maintain his standing within the organization. His survival during this period was a testament to his resilience and adaptability. He emerged from this phase with a reinforced sense of determination and a deepened commitment to his criminal activities. By 2018, Nathan Kinsella had secured a lavish residence in Black Rock, an affluent suburb of Dublin. This move represented a significant shift in his lifestyle and marked a new phase in his criminal career. The mansion, acquired through a complex arrangement involving a front builder named Jerry McGreevy, was emblematic of Kinsella's attempts to project an image of success and legitimacy. The Black Rock property was more than just a residence. It served as a central hub for Kinsella's ongoing criminal activities. The mansion's opulence was a stark contrast to the violent and chaotic world Kinsella had previously inhabited. It became a base for laundering money, coordinating criminal operations, and maintaining connections with other criminal elements. The choice of Black Rock, known for its affluent residents and prestigious reputation, was strategic. Kinsella aimed to distance himself from his past associations and present a veneer of respectability. However, the mansion quickly attracted attention from law enforcement and investigators, who were keenly aware of Kinsella's criminal background and the dubious nature of his financial dealings. Between 2018 and 2020, Nathan Kinsella was deeply involved in a sophisticated money laundering operation. Over this 2-year period, approximately €230,000 flowed through various accounts under Kinsella's control. The operation was designed to obscure the origins of the money and integrate it into legitimate financial channels. Kinsella's involvement in the money laundering scheme was complex and involved multiple layers of transactions. He utilized a network of shell companies and front organizations to manage and conceal the funds. This elaborate scheme was not just a means of avoiding detection, but a way to further his criminal enterprises and secure additional resources. Kinsella's claim that the money was given to him by a wealthy individual as a gift was met with skepticism. Given his criminal background and the nature of the funds, investigators were highly dubious of his explanation. The complexity of the money laundering operation and the substantial amounts of money involved pointed to a well-organized and deliberate effort to evade legal scrutiny. As investigations into Kinsella's activities intensified, he found himself embroiled in a series of legal challenges. The charges against him included money laundering and failure to pay capital acquisitions tax, a serious financial crime that carried significant penalties. Kinsella's legal strategy involved negotiating a guilty plea in hopes of reducing his exposure to more severe charges. The courtroom proceedings were highly charged, with Kinsella attempting to present himself as a victim of circumstance rather than a perpetrator of crime. His defense argued that the charges were exaggerated and that he was being unfairly targeted. Despite these efforts, the evidence against Kinsella was overwhelming, and he was ultimately convicted. The legal battles highlighted the complexities of dealing with financial crimes and the challenges of navigating the criminal justice system. Kinsella's guilty plea resulted in financial penalties and a tarnished reputation, marking a significant setback in his criminal career. Nathan Kinsella's decline was marked by a series of personal and professional setbacks. The once prominent figure in Dublin's criminal world found himself facing the consequences of his actions. The Black Rock Mansion, once a symbol of his success, became a reminder of his downfall. Kinsella's attempts to reinvent himself as a legitimate businessman were overshadowed by his criminal past. His involvement in the money laundering operation and the subsequent legal battles led to a significant erosion of his influence and resources. The collapse of his criminal empire was a stark reminder of the volatile and unpredictable nature of life in organized crime. The sentencing phase of Kinsella's legal troubles underscored the dramatic reversal of fortune. The lavish lifestyle he once enjoyed was replaced by legal and financial difficulties, marking the end of an era for Kinsella and his criminal activities. As the Kinahan-Hutch feud intensified, Kinsella's name resurfaced in connection with violent events. Eamon Cumberton, a hitman for the Kinahan cartel, was serving a life sentence for the murder of Michael Barr, a key figure in the feud. Barr's murder was part of a broader conflict that saw multiple killings linked to the Kinahan-Hutch rivalry. Cumberton, who was serving time in Portlaoise prison, had a vendetta against Kinsella. He accused Kinsella of attacking his mother's home on the night Barr was killed. This accusation further complicated Kinsella's situation and led to heightened tensions within the prison. In July 2023, Kinsella was transferred from Portlaoise prison to a Midlands facility. The decision came after Cumberton made it clear to prison authorities that he intended to harm Kinsella. The authorities, recognizing the immediate threat, acted swiftly to separate the two inmates. Kinsella had only just handed himself over to serve a one-year sentence for failing to pay taxes on substantial sums of money he claimed were gifts. The move to the Midlands was a precautionary measure to ensure Kinsella's safety, reflecting the complex and dangerous nature of his criminal past. The transfer underscored the ongoing conflicts and vendettas that defined Kinsella's life, and highlighted the broader issues of violence and retribution within the criminal landscape. Nathan Kinsella's story is a compelling narrative of ambition, crime, and eventual downfall. His rise from a key figure in the real IRA to a convicted criminal reflects broader themes within organized crime and its transient nature. Kinsella's journey highlights the risks and consequences associated with operating in the criminal underworld. As investigations into his activities continue and his sentencing is finalized, Kinsella's story serves as a cautionary tale. His legacy, marked by both criminal success and ultimate failure, offers insights into the shifting dynamics of organized crime and the challenges faced by those who operate within its confines. The broader implications of his story reflect the ongoing evolution of criminal enterprises and the enduring impact of legal and financial accountability. Welcome to our detailed exploration of one of Dublin's most infamous figures, Jason O'Connor. His story is one of crime, revenge, and dramatic courtroom battles that have left a significant mark on Ireland's criminal landscape. O'Connor's involvement in violent crimes, his association with the powerful Kinahan cartel, and the intense legal battles that followed paint a chilling picture of life at the heart of organized crime. In this video, we'll dissect the complexities of his criminal career, personal vendettas, and the far-reaching consequences of his actions. Join us as we delve into the life of Jason O'Connor and uncover the layers of his turbulent existence. Jason O'Connor was born into a world where crime and violence were part of everyday life. Growing up in a tough neighborhood in Dublin, he was exposed to the harsh realities of urban crime from a young age. His environment was a breeding ground for criminal activity, with gangs like the Westies dominating the local scene. As a teenager, O'Connor was drawn into this world. The Westies, a gang notorious for its violent clashes and drug operations, became the backdrop for his early criminal career. O'Connor quickly learned the ropes of gang life, involving himself in thefts, assaults, and drug distribution. His skills and ruthlessness earned him respect and fear among his peers. By the late 1990s, the Westies were facing internal conflicts and law enforcement crackdowns, leading to their eventual disintegration. O'Connor, however, was not deterred. Instead, he adapted and sought opportunities within other criminal networks. His association with the Westies provided him with valuable connections and experience, which he leveraged as he moved into the broader world of organized crime. This early period in his life laid the groundwork for his future as a major figure in Dublin's criminal underworld. As the Westies' influence waned, Jason O'Connor found himself on the fringes of the Kinahan cartel, one of Dublin's most powerful criminal organizations. The Kinahan cartel was a force to be reckoned with, deeply entrenched in drug trafficking, arms dealing, and violent enforcement operations. O'Connor's involvement with the cartel marked a significant shift in his criminal career, elevating him from a local thug to an associate of a high-profile crime syndicate. Despite not being a top leader within the cartel, O'Connor played a critical role in various criminal activities. He was involved in violent schemes and conspiracies that were central to the cartel's operations. Evidence seized from encrypted communications revealed the extent of his involvement, including detailed plans for violent retribution and tactical operations against rival gangs. The Kinahan cartel was embroiled in a violent feud with the Hutch gang, leading to widespread bloodshed across Dublin. O'Connor's role in this conflict was significant, as he participated in and facilitated several violent acts against Hutch gang members and their associates. His involvement in the cartel not only amplified his criminal activities, but also tied him to a series of high-profile, violent incidents. A pivotal moment in Jason O'Connor's life occurred in June 2015, when his close friend Keith Walker was murdered. Walker, who had been using O'Connor's car, was mistakenly targeted by Christopher MacDonald, a hitman hired for a different target. Dressed in drag to evade detection, MacDonald fired multiple shots at Walker, leading to his tragic death. The murder was a case of mistaken identity, as Walker was an innocent bystander caught in the crossfire of a violent feud. The impact of Walker's death on O'Connor was profound. Consumed by grief and anger, he embarked on a personal crusade for revenge. O'Connor was convinced that Walker's murder was part of a larger conspiracy, and that several individuals were responsible for the act. This belief drove him to target those he suspected of being involved, further escalating the cycle of violence in Dublin. O'Connor's quest for revenge was marked by a series of violent incidents, including attempts to track and eliminate those he believed were connected to Walker's murder. His actions during this period were fueled by a personal vendetta that intensified his involvement in Dublin's criminal underworld. In December 2016, Jason O'Connor faced serious legal trouble when he was charged with conspiring to murder Charlie Cooper, an individual he blamed for his friend Keith Walker's death. The charge was grave and reflected the violent nature of O'Connor's criminal activities. The conspiracy involved detailed plans and preparations to execute a high-profile hit, demonstrating O'Connor's willingness to engage in severe criminal operations. Rather than face trial for the full charge of attempted murder, O'Connor opted to plead guilty to a reduced charge of conspiracy to murder. This strategic move was part of a broader negotiation with the prosecution, aimed at securing a lesser sentence. During this period, O'Connor's criminal activities were not limited to this single charge. His involvement in other gang-related operations was also under scrutiny, with evidence indicating that he was deeply embedded in ongoing criminal activities. The charges against O'Connor spanned from August to December 2016, a period marked by intense violence and instability in Dublin. The prosecution's case against him was bolstered by decrypted messages and evidence of his involvement in planning and executing violent operations, further complicating his legal situation. Jason O'Connor's courtroom appearances were marked by intense drama and volatility. One of the most notable incidents occurred during the trial of Christopher MacDonald, the hitman responsible for the murder of O'Connor's friend, Keith Walker. As O'Connor prepared to testify, a heated exchange erupted when MacDonald called him a rat in court. This outburst led to a near collapse of the trial, highlighting the high emotional stakes and the personal animosity between the individuals involved. The courtroom scene was chaotic, with shouting from spectators and requests from the defense to halt the proceedings. The disruption was significant enough to draw attention from the media and public, underscoring the volatility surrounding O'Connor's legal battles. Despite the turbulence, the trial continued, and MacDonald was eventually convicted for his role in Walker's murder. This episode in the courtroom not only revealed O'Connor's volatile temperament, but also underscored the high tensions and personal conflicts inherent in his legal struggles. The drama surrounding the case contributed to the overall complexity of his legal and criminal situation. Jason O'Connor's defense team worked to portray him as a man deeply affected by personal trauma and mental instability. They argued that the death of his friend Keith Walker had a devastating impact on O'Connor, leading to significant psychological distress. Evidence presented in court included claims that O'Connor was suffering from severe mental health issues and was on antipsychotic medication at the time of his criminal activities. The defense painted a picture of O'Connor as a victim of a violent and troubled environment, arguing that his upbringing and exposure to violence contributed to his criminal behavior. They emphasized the personal toll of his involvement in organized crime and the psychological impact of his experiences. Despite these claims, the court remained focused on the severity of O'Connor's criminal actions. The legal system's approach to organized crime was stringent, with little leniency for individuals involved in violent and high-profile criminal activities. O'Connor's personal struggles were acknowledged, but did not significantly alter the course of his legal proceedings. Jason O'Connor's criminal activities had a profound and far-reaching impact on Dublin's criminal landscape. His involvement in violent incidents, including the targeting of individuals he believed were responsible for his friend Walker's murder, exacerbated the already volatile environment of gang warfare in the city. The personal vendettas and gang-related feuds contributed to a cycle of violence that affected many lives. O'Connor's actions were part of a broader pattern of criminal behavior that had significant consequences for the community. The ripple effects of his involvement in organized crime included increased violence, instability, and fear within Dublin. His story serves as a stark reminder of the destructive nature of organized crime and the personal retribution that can fuel further violence. As Dublin continues to grapple with the legacy of O'Connor's criminal activities, his impact on the criminal world remains a testament to the far-reaching consequences of a life entrenched in crime. With Jason O'Connor facing a lengthy prison sentence, his future remains uncertain. The possibility of spending decades behind bars looms large, with his eventual release unlikely to occur until he is well into old age. During his incarceration, the criminal landscape in Dublin will continue to evolve, with new figures and organizations emerging in his absence. O'Connor's legacy will be shaped by his criminal career, personal vendettas, and the broader impact of his actions on Dublin's criminal underworld. His story is a complex tale of violence, revenge, and the harsh realities of organized crime. As Dublin moves forward, the consequences of O'Connor's actions will linger, serving as a reminder of the destructive potential of a life lived in the shadows of crime. Alan Ryan's story begins in the turbulent environment of North Dublin, where he emerged as a prominent figure in the real IRA. From a young age, Ryan demonstrated a fierce commitment to the Republican cause, joining the youth wing of the IRA before he even reached adulthood. His involvement in the armed Republican movement was a natural progression for someone so deeply immersed in the political and ideological currents of his community. As a teenager, Ryan's commitment to the cause was evident. Despite the ongoing peace process and the changing dynamics of the IRA, Ryan remained staunchly loyal to the principles of armed struggle. His early encounters with the law, including his arrest at an IRA training camp, only solidified his reputation within the dissident Republican movement. His time in Portlaoise prison, among the political prisoners, further entrenched his resolve and his stature within the movement. Upon his release, Ryan's leadership within the real IRA Dublin Brigade became more pronounced. He sought to assert the group's relevance in a city where criminal enterprises and drug gangs were beginning to overshadow traditional political struggles. His efforts to revive the real IRA influence led to an increase in violent confrontations with rival gangs, marking the beginning of a new era of conflict in Dublin's underworld. The early 2010s were marked by escalating tensions in Dublin's criminal underworld. As the real IRA, under Alan Ryan's leadership, sought to reassert its influence, it found itself in conflict with established criminal organizations, notably the Kinahan cartel. This period saw a series of violent incidents that underscored the intensifying struggle for control over Dublin's lucrative drug trade. The Kinahan cartel, already entrenched in the city's criminal landscape, viewed the real IRA as a significant threat to their dominance. The rivalry between the two groups was marked by a series of violent clashes, with each side seeking to outmaneuver the other. The real IRA attempt to reassert itself through violent means only served to further exacerbate the tensions, leading to a cycle of retaliation and escalating violence. During this time, the real IRA actions included a mix of political posturing and criminal activities. Their efforts to position themselves as defenders of traditional Republican values were increasingly overshadowed by their involvement in extortion, drug trafficking, and violent enforcement against rivals. The contrast between their purported political motives and their criminal activities became increasingly stark, contributing to the growing instability in Dublin. Alan Ryan's death on September 3, 2012, was a turning point in the ongoing conflict. The murder, which occurred in the midst of a chaotic period for the real IRA, shocked the city and marked a significant escalation in the violence. Ryan was shot dead in broad daylight, a brazen act that highlighted the shifting dynamics within Dublin's criminal underworld. The aftermath of Ryan's murder was characterized by a period of intense turmoil and retribution. His death left a power vacuum within the real IRA, leading to a period of internal strife and external pressures. The group struggled to maintain cohesion and leadership in the wake of Ryan's assassination, with various factions vying for control. Ryan's death also had a profound impact on the city's criminal landscape. The power vacuum created by his assassination led to increased violence and instability, as rival gangs and criminal organizations sought to capitalize on the disruption. The real IRA, once a formidable force, found itself grappling with the consequences of Ryan's death and the subsequent rise of other criminal players. In the wake of Alan Ryan's murder, Dublin experienced a surge in violence as various factions within the criminal underworld sought to assert their dominance. The real IRA, struggling to recover from the loss of their leader, faced increasing challenges from rival gangs and criminal organizations. The vacuum left by Ryan's death created an environment ripe for further conflict and power struggles. The Kinahan cartel, in particular, capitalized on the chaos. Their strategic maneuvers during this period involved consolidating their position in the drug trade and expanding their influence. The cartel's ability to adapt to the shifting dynamics allowed them to strengthen their grip on Dublin's criminal landscape. Their actions during this time included forging new alliances, expanding their operations, and eliminating potential threats. Meanwhile, the real IRA internal struggles were exacerbated by the murder of Peter Butterley, a figure whose death further destabilized the organization. Butterley's murder was a significant blow to the real IRA and highlighted the group's vulnerability. The combination of internal turmoil and external pressures led to a period of disarray and decline for the real IRA Dublin Brigade. The murder of Vinnie Ryan on February 29, 2016, was a brutal chapter in Dublin's ongoing saga of gangland violence. Ryan, a prominent figure within the real IRA, was shot dead outside his home in Finglas. The attack, carried out in broad daylight, was a calculated move that underscored the volatility and danger of Dublin's criminal underworld. The murder was a significant event that highlighted the ongoing feud between the real IRA and other criminal factions. The shooting, which resulted in Ryan being struck by multiple bullets, was a stark reminder of the intensity of the conflict. The circumstances of the murder, Ryan's presence with his young daughter at the time, added a tragic dimension to the event. Speculation surrounding the perpetrators of Ryan's murder included suggestions of involvement by the Kinahan cartel. While some believed that the cartel was directly responsible, others thought it was the work of independent operators or freelance hit teams. The ambiguity surrounding the motives and perpetrators added to the complexity of the situation and kept both law enforcement and the public guessing. As Dublin's underworld reeled from the violent clashes between the real IRA and rival gangs, the Kinahan cartel emerged as a central player in the evolving power struggle. With Alan Ryan's death leaving a power vacuum, the Kinahans, already well established in the city's drug trade, saw an opportunity to consolidate their influence and assert dominance over their rivals. The Kinahan cartel's strategy was multifaceted. Recognizing the disruption caused by the feud, they intensified their criminal operations while maintaining a relatively low profile. Their approach was both strategic and opportunistic, capitalizing on the chaos to strengthen their position in the drug market. This included expanding their network, forging new alliances, and eliminating potential threats. The cartel's ability to adapt quickly to the shifting dynamics of gangland violence was a testament to their operational sophistication and ruthless efficiency. During this period, Dublin witnessed an increase in violence as various factions, including the Kinahan cartel, engaged in turf wars and retaliatory attacks. The Kinahans, known for their strategic acumen, carefully orchestrated their moves to avoid direct confrontations that could draw unwanted attention from law enforcement. Instead, they preferred to use intermediaries and subcontract criminals to carry out violent acts, thereby distancing themselves from the direct fallout of their actions. Despite the chaos, the Kinahan cartel's influence continued to grow. Their ability to leverage the instability created by the feud allowed them to further entrench themselves in Dublin's criminal landscape. They capitalized on the disruption to expand their operations and strengthen their grip on the city's drug trade, making them a dominant force in the ongoing struggle for power. The downfall of the real IRA Dublin Brigade was both dramatic and decisive. The violence and instability following Alan Ryan's death led to a significant decline in the brigade's operational capacity. The organization's inability to maintain cohesion and discipline during the aftermath of Ryan's assassination was a critical factor in its downfall. Following Ryan's murder, the real IRA faced internal turmoil and external pressure. The group's leadership was in disarray, and its ranks were increasingly filled with individuals either arrested or disillusioned by the escalating violence and lack of progress. The disorganization was exacerbated by the murder of Peter Butterley, a figure whose death further destabilized the already fragile structure of the Dublin Brigade. The Guards took advantage of this instability, They launched a series of high-profile operations aimed at dismantling the real IRA remaining networks. These operations, fueled by intelligence gathered from ongoing investigations and the public's increased willingness to cooperate with law enforcement, resulted in numerous arrests and convictions. The trials that followed brought to light the extent of the real IRA involvement in criminal activities beyond their purported political aims. The convictions of individuals involved in the murder of Vinnie Ryan and other criminal acts underscored the group's transformation from a politically motivated organization into a criminal enterprise. The trials revealed the real IRA deep involvement in organized crime, including extortion, drug trafficking, and violent enforcement against rivals. The conviction of key figures in the organization marked a turning point. The Dublin Brigade, once a formidable force in the city's criminal and political landscape, was effectively dismantled. The group's ability to operate and exert influence was significantly diminished, leading to the collapse of its organized structure and a reduction in its activities. The fall of the Dublin Brigade had far-reaching implications. It not only weakened the real IRA presence in Dublin, but also shifted the balance of power in the city's criminal underworld. With the brigade's decline, other criminal organizations, including the Kinahan cartel, seized the opportunity to expand their influence and fill the void left by the real IRA disintegration. As the real IRA's Dublin Brigade faded into the background, the focus shifted to the new dynamics emerging in Dublin's criminal landscape. The power struggles and shifting alliances that followed the brigade's fall continued to shape the city's underworld, setting the stage for the next chapter in Dublin's ongoing saga of crime and violence. In today's episode, we'll delve deeper into the rise and operations of the family, an elusive and formidable criminal network that has become Ireland's #1 Garda target. Operating in the shadows for more than 2 decades, they have now surpassed even the Kinahan cartel in prominence, and their international reach has made them a primary focus of law enforcement. Stay tuned as we break down the history, power, and impact of the family, and explore the tactics used by both the criminals and law enforcement in a battle for control. The roots of the family go deep into the streets of South Dublin, where 2 brothers first came together to form what would become one of Ireland's most dangerous and secretive criminal gangs. Beginning with heroin smuggling in the late 1990s, the brothers quickly learned the ropes of international drug trade, making strategic connections across Europe. In the early days, their operations were modest compared to the major criminal groups of the time. However, they recognized the potential for growth and strategically avoided drawing attention, using discretion and a low profile. They weren't looking to make headlines, they were in it for the long haul, and their patience paid off. Though small in scale initially, these early ventures into drug trafficking set the stage for the empire they would later build. The brothers saw a growing demand for heroin within the country, and with their European contacts, they quickly became a key player in the Irish drug market. The foundation of the gang was built on a network of trusted associates and family members who kept the operation tight-knit and covert. Unlike more visible gangs who flaunt their wealth and power, the family chose a different path. Operating under the radar allowed them to avoid law enforcement scrutiny, and it worked at least for a time. During their early years, they expanded their operations through low-key alliances, particularly with the Kinahan cartel, which was already a major force in European drug trafficking. By the early 2000s, the family had evolved into a sophisticated syndicate. Their focus on importing and distributing heroin allowed them to gain a foothold, but they didn't stop there. As Ireland's drug market expanded in the Celtic Tiger years, the family diversified, branching into the cocaine and cannabis trade. They were perfectly poised to take advantage of these new markets, and by doing so, they cemented their place as a formidable crime group in Dublin. As the Kinahan cartel began to dominate Ireland's criminal landscape, the family adapted. They moved into arms trafficking, money laundering, and other high-profit areas. While the Kinahans were becoming more notorious for their violent tactics and lavish lifestyles, the family remained quieter and more strategic in their approach. However, as the Kinahans began their downfall, starting with the feud against the Hutch gang, the family took full advantage of the situation. As the Kinahans became embroiled in an all-out war, the family seized control of key drug routes and markets, positioning themselves at the top of Ireland's criminal food chain. One of the critical factors that contributed to the family's rise was their ability to evolve and take on new roles in the international drug trade. Their flexibility allowed them to become indispensable players in the market, particularly as the Kinahans' operations weakened due to intense law enforcement action. The collapse of the Kinahan cartel was monumental. Key members like Declan Mr. Nobody Brady and Thomas Bomber Kavanagh were arrested and convicted, leaving a massive void in Ireland's criminal underworld. The Kinahans had dominated drug importation, firearms smuggling, and money laundering for years. But as law enforcement cracked down, the family emerged as the new force in the Irish criminal scene. Rather than fleeing to international territories like Spain or Dubai, where the Kinahans sought refuge, the family chose to remain rooted in Ireland. This decision allowed them to keep a firmer grip on their operations and territories, particularly within Dublin's urban areas. As the Kinahans' influence waned, the family seized this rare opportunity to expand. They absorbed the Kinahans' former territories and contacts, consolidating their position as Ireland's most dangerous gang. Their rise was swift and ruthless, as they capitalized on the power vacuum left by the Kinahans' collapse. The family's strategy for success was simple: use violence when necessary, and avoid drawing too much attention to their operations. However, as their influence grew, so did their willingness to use extreme measures to maintain control. Their involvement in the killings of Cormac Berkeley and Gary Carey were not isolated incidents, they were calculated acts of intimidation. By eliminating people who owed them money or posed a threat to their business, the family sent a clear message to both their rivals and their associates. Crossing them would have deadly consequences. They were not a group to be underestimated, and they made sure the entire drug network knew it. This violent reputation has become a defining characteristic of the family, but it's also what sets them apart from other gangs in Ireland. While many groups may be willing to use force, few have the same level of calculated ruthlessness as the family. Their operations are driven by a need to control, and violence is simply part of the strategy. One of the most critical aspects of the family's rise to power is their control over key neighborhoods in Dublin. They have established a network that stretches across several areas, including Ballyfermot, Clondalkin, Ronanstown, Kilmainham, and Tala. In these areas, they are not just involved in the drug trade. They have created a socio-economic structure where their influence touches every aspect of daily life. From the local drug market to businesses and even social services, their reach is deeply embedded in the community. Young people in particular are targeted by the family as potential recruits. They are promised a life of luxury, fast cash, designer clothes, and status. But behind the allure of wealth lies a dangerous trap. The recruits are often used as disposable assets, people who are easily replaced if they are caught by law enforcement. This system ensures the core leadership stays insulated from risk. The family doesn't just recruit from the criminal underworld, they target the most vulnerable, offering them what seems like an escape from poverty and lack of opportunity. This makes their influence more pervasive as they create a cycle where young people are groomed into a life of crime, often with no way out. Money laundering is a cornerstone of the family's success. Their ability to turn ill-gotten gains into legitimate assets has allowed them to avoid detection and continue their operations at an immense scale. Rather than relying on traditional criminal means to launder money, the family invests in legitimate businesses, car dealerships, tanning salons, and other seemingly innocuous operations. These businesses serve as fronts for their illicit activities, allowing them to move vast sums of money through the financial system without raising suspicion. Their financial operations are so sophisticated that they are able to avoid detection for years. This has made them one of the most difficult targets for law enforcement, who must go beyond traditional methods of seizing drugs and arresting individuals. To truly dismantle the family, authorities must target the very businesses that keep their operations flowing. The family is particularly adept at recruiting individuals who are not on law enforcement's radar. Their method of choosing clean, middle-aged men or women who have no criminal history allows them to move drugs and firearms with a lower risk of detection. These individuals are paid handsomely for their work, and in many cases, they have no idea that they are involved in one of the most dangerous and far-reaching criminal organizations in Ireland. Take Paul Bourke, for example, a 56-year-old man with no criminal background who was arrested with €1.7 million worth of drugs and firearms. Bourke's arrest shocked many, not just because of the size of his haul, but because he was a seemingly ordinary man with no apparent connections to organized crime. Additionally, the family has an international reach that goes beyond Irish borders. Their ties to criminal syndicates across Europe and even further afield provide them with access to drugs, firearms, and resources that other gangs can only dream of. This international network has made the family a player on the global stage, complicating efforts to bring them down. As technology continues to advance, so too do the tactics of criminal gangs like the family. The rise of encrypted communication platforms has given them a new edge in avoiding detection by law enforcement. Using secure messaging services like Ghost, they can coordinate drug shipments and transactions without fear of interception. This technological shift has led to significant changes in law enforcement tactics. In response to the rise of encrypted messaging, authorities launched Operation Kraken, a multi-pronged effort to target high-level criminals using these platforms. But even as law enforcement increases their focus on these encrypted networks, the family remains one step ahead, constantly adapting to stay out of reach. Despite multiple high-profile arrests and seizures, the family continues to thrive. Their ability to adapt, innovate, and evade law enforcement has made them an incredibly persistent threat. Each time law enforcement makes progress, the family seems to find a new way to regain control, making their eventual downfall all the more difficult to achieve. The Guards' relentless pursuit under Operation Compact is a testament to their commitment, but this fight is far from over. The family may have lost some members, but their core remains intact, and their operations continue to thrive. There is a specific kind of silence that falls over a prison landing when a certain cell door opens. In the Irish penal system, there are thousands of inmates, many of them violent, many of them members of organized crime cartels with blood on their hands. But there is one name that stands apart from the gangland hitmen and the drug kingpins. His name is Leon Wright. To the public, he is a headline. To the prison officers, he is a constant, looming threat that requires riot shields and tactical planning just to move from one room to another. He has been called the most dangerous prisoner in Ireland, not because of the wealth he amassed or the territory he controlled, but because of a volatile, unpredictable rage that seems to have no off switch. As of 2026, he remains the benchmark for institutional violence. His story is a grim map of Ireland's underworld, stretching from the neglected corners of the south inner city to the highest security units the state has ever built. The story begins in St. Teresa's Gardens, a now demolished complex in Dublin's south inner city that once stood as a symbol of both community and catastrophic social failure. In the 1980s and 90s, these red brick flats were the front lines of the city's heroin epidemic. For a young Leon Wright, this was the environment that shaped his early perception of the world. It was a place where the sirens were constant and the influence of the state felt distant, usually arriving only in the form of a squad car. The courtrooms of his later life would hear detailed echoes of this upbringing, tales of severe neglect, a childhood spent without the steadying hand of a father figure, and an education found on the stairwells of the flats rather than in a classroom. He was forged in a red zone for crime, and by the age of 10, the cracks were already showing. While other children were navigating the milestones of adolescence, Leon was already being documented by local guards as a youth who lacked the internal brakes most people possess. He wasn't just a nuisance. He was a boy with an explosive, hair-trigger temperament that found its expression in the only language the streets offered: raw, unchanneled aggression. He began drifting toward the fringes of the Brannigan gang and other local criminal crews, but he never truly fit the mold of a foot soldier. He was too volatile for the disciplined world of organized drug dealing. He was a lone agent of chaos, a boy who didn't just break the rules, but seemed to actively seek the confrontation that came with shattering them. By his early teens, he had moved from petty theft to a level of violence that signaled a dark road ahead. By the time Leon Wright hit his 18th birthday, he had already accumulated a rap sheet that most career criminals take decades to build. He had become a teenage terror, specializing in the kind of high-adrenaline, low-reward crimes that leave a lasting scar on the public psyche. He wasn't looking for a sophisticated score. He was looking for the rush of dominance. He began hijacking cars, often with the terrified owners still inside, and pulling knives on strangers for pocket change. There was a frantic, desperate energy to his crimes that suggested he wasn't just after money, he was after a reaction. In 2005, the legal system decided it had finally seen enough of the boy from St. Teresa's. At just 18 years old, a point where most young men are starting their adult lives, Wright was handed a massive 13-year sentence. This wasn't for a single act, but for a litany of terrifying offences. The centrepiece of the prosecution was a harrowing robbery in St. Stephen's Green, the heart of Dublin's social life, where Wright had held a blade to the throats of a group of teenagers. It was a crime that shocked the city. The presiding judges were presented with a young man who showed a total absence of empathy and a level of recidivism that suggested he was beyond the reach of standard rehabilitation. They hoped 13 years of structured confinement would break the cycle of his rage. Instead, the cold stone of the prison system only served to refine his volatility, turning a street thug into the state's most difficult prisoner. Prison is designed to contain and, ideally, to rehabilitate. But for Leon Wright, the cell door was merely the start of a new war. Almost from the moment he entered the adult system, he became a category of one, an inmate so unmanageable that he required a bespoke set of rules. This is where the legend of Ireland's most dangerous truly took root. He didn't fall into line with the hierarchical gang structures that usually govern life behind bars. He didn't care about prison politics. His war was with the authority of the uniform. Over the years, Wright racked up hundreds of P19 disciplinary forms, a number that became a grim internal record for the Irish prison service. These reports detailed a relentless history of assaults on prison staff, threats to murder officers' families, and savage attacks on fellow inmates who happened to look at him the wrong way. The violence was so frequent and so spontaneous that the prison service had to abandon traditional methods of movement. Whenever Leon Wright needed to be moved, whether for a medical check, a court appearance, or even a brief period in the exercise yard, it became a tactical operation. He was met at his cell door by a 5-man control and restraint team. These officers wore full riot gear, heavy helmets with visors, stab-proof vests, and thick gloves, and carried large, transparent plexiglass shields. They moved him in a pod formation, a human cage of steel and plastic designed to prevent him from being able to lunge or spit at anyone. He was a man who lived his life behind a shield, even when he was the one being guarded. The psychological toll on the staff was immense. Many described the Leon Wright shift as a period of high alert tension, where a single misstep or a second of diverted attention could result in a life-changing injury. The true depth of the danger Leon Wright posed to the public, and the reason he is discussed with such gravity by criminologists, was realized in 2013. He had been released after serving a significant portion of his 2005 sentence. For a few brief weeks, he walked the streets of Dublin as a free man, a chance to prove that the system had worked. But the years of confinement had done nothing to dampen the fires in his mind. Within a month of his release, Wright embarked on a stabbing rampage in Dublin city centre that defied any logical criminal motive. He didn't target rivals or debtors, he targeted innocent people who were simply in his path. In the space of a few minutes, he attacked an Irishman and a Mauritian national. Both victims were stabbed, their lives nearly ended in a blur of random predatory violence. When the guards finally managed to wrestle him into custody, Wright's demeanour was chilling. He didn't offer excuses or plead that he was under the influence of drugs. Instead, he made a statement that became a permanent part of his dark legacy. He told the investigators that he had aimed for their organs. He expressed a cold, clear desire to have killed them, stating that the only reason they survived was that his blade had been deflected by a board or heavy clothing the victims were wearing. This wasn't a robbery gone wrong. It was the expression of a man who viewed human life as something to be extinguished for no reason other than he felt like doing it. The courts responded with the only tool they had left, another heavy sentence that sent him straight back to the high-security wings. By 2018, the Irish prison service reached a breaking point. They realized that traditional solitary confinement was failing to manage men like Leon Wright. Years of isolation were making him more volatile, and he began taking legal cases against the state, claiming his human rights were being breached by the inhuman nature of his constant segregation. In response, the state opened a revolutionary and controversial facility, the National Violence Reduction Unit at Wheatfield Prison. This was a prison within a prison, a high-tech facility designed for the 5 or 6 most violent, complex men in the country. Wright was among the first to be moved there. The Violence Reduction Unit was a shift in philosophy. The guards were no longer just wardens. They were part of a multidisciplinary team that included specialized psychologists. The goal was to de-escalate, rather than just restrain. They gave Wright a punch bag in his cell, a physical outlet for the red mist that frequently descended upon him. He was given access to a small private garden where he could see the sky without the presence of a riot team, and he was engaged in intense daily therapy sessions. For the state, it was an expensive experiment in whether a man built for conflict could be taught the mechanics of peace. Yet, even in this controlled environment, the tension remained. Wright was the benchmark for the unit's success or failure. He lived in a glass cage, a place of higher comfort than a standard cell, but one that existed only because he was too dangerous to be anywhere else. The world outside the prison walls changed as the 2020s progressed, but Leon Wright's internal world remained stagnant. After another release in the early 2020s, there was a quiet hope that the years of therapy in the Violence Reduction Unit had finally provided him with the tools to survive in society. For a time, he lived under the radar, moving between addresses in North Dublin and Swords. However, in February 2025, the cycle of violence repeated with a terrifying, familiar symmetry. Wright embarked on a reckless and irrational crime spree, targeting small off-licenses and supermarkets in the Ballymun and Meekstown areas. These weren't the actions of a professional thief. He was robbing shops for small amounts of cash, sometimes as little as €100, while wielding a 19-centimeter blade in front of terrified, ordinary workers. He showed a complete lack of tactical awareness, even returning to rob the same shop twice in 48 hours, almost as if he were daring the authorities to find him. The spree ended in a dramatic televised standoff. In a garden in Ballymun, surrounded by the armed support unit and detectives, Wright stood his ground with a knife in his hand. Video footage captured the high-stakes moment. "Leon, you will be shot," the guards warned. The tension was palpable as the community watched from behind windows. Wright refused to drop the weapon, pacing like a caged animal in the open air. Finally, the ASU utilized non-lethal impact munitions, beanbag rounds, to neutralize him. The man who had spent his life fighting the state was once again pinned to the ground, his brief window of freedom slammed shut by the same force that had defined his entire adult life. As we move through 2026, the story of Leon Wright has entered its latest predictable chapter. In mid-2025, he stood before the courts once again, facing 4 separate charge sheets that detailed his spree of robberies and his assaults on police officers. The courtroom scene was a familiar one. His legal team spoke of the profound neglect of his childhood and his complex psychological needs, while the prosecution laid out a record of violence that few in the history of the state could match. The judge, recognizing that Wright was a man who simply could not function without the structure of a cell, handed down a sentence of 7.5 years. This took into account his guilty pleas and the reactivation of suspended sentences that he had treated with contempt. Today, at 38 years old, Leon Wright is back in the high-security estate. He is a man who has spent nearly 2 decades of his life in a state of constant, exhausting warfare with society. To the prison service, he remains a red status inmate, a person for whom the riot shields must always be ready. To the public, he is a reminder of the limitations of the justice system, a man who cannot be safely released, yet who cannot be legally held forever. He sits in his cell in 2026, a silent and volatile presence in the heart of the system. The tragedy of his life is not just the crimes he committed, but the total absence of any other path. As the clock ticks toward his next eventual release date, the state is left with the same impossible question it has faced since he was 18. What do you do with a man who has no fear of the consequences and no desire to stop? For now, the steel doors are locked, the shields are in the rack, and the most dangerous man in Ireland remains exactly where the system believes he belongs: Mullingar. A quiet town in the heart of County Westmeath, known for its lakes, its markets, and its proud sense of community. But in the summer of 2024, beneath that calm surface, something dark was stirring. 2 traveller families, the Nevins and the Dunnigans, had been locked in a spiral of violence that would shock the town and end with blood spilled on a busy street in broad daylight. This is the story of how a €50 drug debt ignited one of Ireland's most violent traveller feuds in recent years. It began, as so many tragedies do, with something small, a petty dispute, a whispered insult, and according to Garda reports, a debt, no more than €50. On July 4th, 2024, tensions between the 2 families flared. Threats were made, windows were smashed. Gardaí responded to calls of shots fired at a house. It was the first of what would become 15 violent incidents in just 5 weeks. Over the following days, the feud spiraled. A stolen car, a recovered firearm, and a string of chilling threats, including one directed at a woman named Lucy Dinnigan and her 2 sons. The name behind that threat: Michael Nevin Jr., a 39-year-old bar worker from Grange Heights. What began as words would soon become bloodshed. As July turned to August, fear gripped Mullingar's traveller community. Garda patrols were stepped up. Locals reported convoys of cars roaming the town late at night, headlights flashing, engines roaring, acts of intimidation that hinted at what was coming. Both families lived only minutes apart, but by now there was a line drawn through the town. The Dinnigan side claimed to have been hunted and harassed. The Nevins accused them of the same. Then, on Friday, August 2nd, just after 5 o'clock in the evening, the feud erupted into open violence. It was a warm Friday evening. Anthony Dinnigan, a father in his late 20s, left his home on Austin Friar Street with his partner and young child. They'd planned to run a quick errand before dinner, but CCTV would later show something else moving through Mullingar that evening: a convoy of 2 cars circling the area. Inside those cars were men from the Nevin family. Moments later, the cars stopped. Doors opened. A group of men got out and began to chase. As Anthony and his partner ran, one man broke from the pack, tall, heavy-set, carrying something glinting in the sunlight. It was Michael Nevin Jr. Witnesses would later say he shouted, "I have you now. You're going to die today." Then the attack began. Nevin Jr. cornered Anthony Dinnigan on the street. He plunged a black-handled kitchen knife deep into his victim's chest and abdomen, again and again. Anthony fell, bleeding heavily. As he tried to crawl away, another blow landed, this time from a hatchet that slashed open his leg. By the time Gardaí arrived, The ground was slick with blood. A detective later told the court, "The stabbing happened in broad daylight after 5 o'clock on a busy street. Nearby, Garda searches found a shotgun and ammunition hidden close to the Nevin side of town. Somebody, it seemed, had come prepared for war. Paramedics rushed to the scene, but it was Anthony's own family who got him to the hospital first. He was bleeding from the chest, his lung, liver and bowels torn apart by knife wounds. Doctors said one injury, to the liver, could have led to death. For hours, surgeons fought to keep him alive. He would survive. Barely. But the trauma would stay with him forever." Within days, Gardaí moved fast. 5 people were arrested in coordinated raids across Mullingar. Among them, Michael Nevin Jr., the alleged knife man, Michael Nevin Sr., his father, aged 61, and Christopher Sausages Nevin, the uncle, a 31-year-old known to Gardaí, later accused of wielding a pickaxe during the attack. In statements from his hospital bed, Anthony Duggan identified his attacker immediately. "It was Michael Nevin Jr. who stabbed me." Court documents later revealed that both father and son had made death threats to Duggan family members just weeks earlier. When the case came before the Mullingar District Court on August 7th, the town was on edge. Nevin Jr. faced charges of assault causing serious harm, threatening to kill, and possession of a weapon. Nevin Sr. was accused of issuing death threats and being a passenger in a stolen car used in the feud. Both men were remanded in custody. The feud wasn't over, but the law had finally stepped in. The Mullingar Feud wasn't an isolated act of madness. It was the latest battle in a long and bitter family war. Throughout the summer of 2024, Gardaí had logged a grim catalogue of violence. Shots fired at a family home, criminal damage to cars and houses, 11 separate death threats in just 1 month. And even as the courts prepared to prosecute the Nevins, the violence continued. In May 2025, 2 Duggan brothers, James and Patrick, were charged with a machete attack on another traveller home in Mullingar. The feud had grown, pulling in cousins, friends and neighbours. An entire community was now living under the shadow of revenge. By June 2025, the case finally reached the Central Criminal Court in Dublin. The charges were serious: attempted murder, violent disorder, assault causing serious harm. But in court, both men, Michael Nevin Jr. and Christopher Sausages Nevin, changed their pleas. Nevin Jr. admitted to causing serious harm to Anthony Duggan. Christopher admitted to violent disorder, acknowledging he'd taken part in the assault, but not that he'd struck the fatal blows. The DPP accepted their pleas. The attempted murder charges were dropped. Still, the judge made no secret of his view. On November 7, 2025, Mr. Justice David Keane called the attack particularly severe and vicious. He said the victim's survival was more a matter of luck than judgment. Then came sentencing. Nevin Jr., 13 years with 3 suspended. Christopher Nevin, 8 years with 2.5 suspended. 8 years behind bars for the knifeman, 4 for his accomplice. Justice Keane also noted that Nevin Jr. still had a suspended sentence from 2019 and referred him back to Mullingar Circuit Court to decide whether that would be reactivated. In a quiet courtroom, Anthony Duggan took the stand. His voice trembled as he read his victim impact statement. "I'm a shell of the man I once was," he said. "Every scar on my body is a reminder of that day. The attack stripped away the person I used to be." He described sleepless nights, flashbacks, and a constant fear of stepping outside his door. His partner, who had run for safety with their child that afternoon, sat silently in the gallery, eyes fixed on the floor. After sentencing, Gardaí confirmed what many already feared. The feud had left a lasting scar on Mullingar. Detective Garda Kevin Lennon told the court that 11 threats to kill had been recorded in the month before the stabbing. His colleague, Garda James Grogarty, summed it up simply: "This was part of an ongoing traveller feud between the Nevin and Duggan families. But even amid the bitterness, there was a glimmer of hope. Both families eventually agreed to sit down with the Traveller Mediation Service, an independent group that works to resolve feuds within the traveller community. Mediation sessions were held quietly, behind closed doors, And though peace wasn't declared, open violence between the two families gradually faded. A €50 drug debt, 15 violent incidents, a man nearly killed in the street. And now, years later, 2 men sit behind bars, their families fractured, their community shaken. In Mullingar, life has returned to its familiar rhythm. Shops open, children walk to school, and yet, the whispers remain. Locals still remember that Friday evening. The screams, the flashing blue lights, and the sense that for a few terrible moments, their town had become a battlefield. Violence has a way of echoing long after the blood has dried. For the families at the heart of the Mullingar Feud, the scars, physical and emotional, will never fully fade. And for everyone else, it's a reminder that even the smallest spark can set fire to an entire community if no one steps in to stop it.